just not do it live. Okay, if you're there, let me know if you can see me or hear me, you guys. Yes.
I'm hoping this finally worked, you guys. Let me know if you're...
Okay. All right, I think we're good now. I think we've actually got this. Oh, do I have a story for you? Let me just go ahead and pull it up real fast. Good, we are good. I am so sorry, you guys. This is crazy. I actually was recording for over almost an hour before I realized it never synced with YouTube. And to be honest, I have no idea why. I tried everything I can think of, refreshed it, started over, made sure I had the streaming key, and it just wasn't going to work for anything. So boy, do I have a story for you that ties into all of this. So I'm going to just start all over and try to move through this a lot quicker because I had already recorded an hour before I realized it wasn't showing up on YouTube. So if you're out there and you can hear me, oh, Lily, you're my witness. We're good now. Oh my goodness. I was this close to calling it quits, which is what the adversary wanted. And I'll tell you how I got it to work. Instead of scheduling it, I just said, let's go live right now. And for some reason, when I went live right now, it's telling me there's a warning that I'm just going to ignore the warnings. They're just a distraction. But I just decided to go live immediately instead of, I kept scheduling it for 5 minutes out, 10 minutes out while I tried to fix all the bugs. But it said there were no bugs. It said everything was fine. Everything matched. Anyways, long story short, here we are. From now on, I think I am not going to schedule. I'm just going to immediately go live. Would have saved me a couple hours. So, yay! Thank you guys. Thanks for bearing with me. I really feel the adversary is the reason why this happened today, and I'm going to tell you why in just a second. But before we rehash all of that, you guys, I'm short on time now because my kids will be coming home from school in a little bit, and so I really want to move through this message. It's so important. That's why the adversary did not want me to deliver it today. I can tell you that. So before we get started on that, I just have a couple of announcements. Real quick, for those of you who follow me on Facebook and you saw my announcement last night, you may have seen it this morning, but I also want to announce it here on my video message that we have started a GoFundMe campaign for the Believers Building Bridges tour. So that is already up and running right now. I'm going to have links below tonight, so check back, click on that. Feel free to share it with anyone who you think would be interested or passionate about this movement. We just want to spread the word. We are excited to schedule the next event, but we really have no funds to do so. They're really, really minimal right now. So we're hoping that we'll get some more donations so we can hopefully come to your city. So I just wanted to share that. I wasn't asked to collect donations. I just sort of volunteered and said I have this great idea. I've done a GoFundMe campaign before. They work really well. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go ahead and set one up for our movement. And Lynn was totally awesome with that. He gave me the green light, and here we are. So I'll have the link to that down below. Check back for that, and please help us spread the word. I'm excited that this is going to be the best way to bring in the funds to help produce these events. So I'm really excited. Okay, the other announcement I want to share with you real quick is that I'm going to start donating a percentage of all my Hydroheel sales to the Believers Building Bridges tour. So for those of you who already are customers and you love the products, from now on, every time you make a purchase, a percentage of every sale will go directly to the Believers Building Bridges tour. That's my way of helping. It's a small business, so I don't know how much it will do, but I know it will do something, and I hope it really helps. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm excited. All right. So now let's get right into the message. And I'm going to say that, as I always say before with these live messages, I'm going to wait till the very end to address all of your comments so we can actually have a conversation. I know there's some of you who are short for time and you just want the message to go smooth, and then you like to come back later and hear the conversation. So I'll get to everything at the end and let's talk. That's my favorite part. But I will glance every now and then just to make sure there's no hiccups and everything is running smooth. So thank you guys for reaching out to me because it helps me know that the video is going live and it's working. Okay, so let's talk about this opposition. Whew, you guys, it has been a day. It really has. And like I said, I'd already been an hour into this video when I realized it wasn't even streaming on YouTube. And I had shared all the opposition that I encountered today, which tells me how important this message is because the adversary does not want me to put it out there. And I had just said that, and I'm saying it again right now. And clearly it's evident with the difficulties we had today getting this going that the adversary does not want me to share this message. So, even more reason why I'm excited to share it. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly share with you what happened today. I won't go into the details like I did earlier because they're probably not necessary. But long story short, I got a series of phone calls this morning to my phone, and they were all telemarketers. And I didn't have time to block the calls like my husband always suggests that I do. It's such great advice, let me tell you. But I didn't have time. I was busy cleaning and getting things done, and these calls kept coming in. So finally, I sat down, started blocking them so they'd stop. And after I did that, I started getting local calls like crazy just from this local area. So when that happens, then you think, you know, well, maybe it's someone in my ward or it's a neighbor and they need something, so I better take this call. And then you answer it and you get a recording and it's a telemarketer. It's a computerized telemarketer. So I hung up and these calls just kept coming, but they were different numbers every time, showing they were from my area. So finally, I answered a call and I got a recording and realized, okay, this is a telemarketer again. I'm going to go ahead and block this call. So I did. And right when I hung up, phone rang again, and it was another different number, and I thought, okay, I'm going to answer it one more time, and maybe it's someone in my ward, so, you know, we'll just answer it. So I answer it, and then all of a sudden I can hear someone, and I realize it's not a telemarketer, or at least it's not a computer recording, so I wait, and this woman just starts yelling at me, and I said, hello, and she said, I need you to quit harassing me and quit calling my phone. I'm going to call the police right now. I've got your phone number written down and I'm taking it to the police. You better leave me alone. And I had no idea who she was or what she was talking about. So I listened, and when she was done, I just so politely said, I'm so sorry. I'm so confused. I don't know who you are. I haven't called anyone today. I do know that. I haven't called anyone, and I'm sorry if there's been like a misunderstanding or a mistake, but I would never do that. And she said, no, 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 no. I hit the callback button, and so I wouldn't have made a mistake. I dialed the right number because I immediately hit callback. This is the number that keeps calling my phone, and your voice is the same voice of the recording that I keep getting. And I thought, oh my goodness. And so again, I kindly just said, you know, I'm so sorry, but I think I know what you're talking about because I've been getting those calls too from a local phone number, and it's a recording, and it's a woman with a high voice like mine, but I promise you it's not me. And I've been getting those calls all morning. I've been blocking them, and she just kept persisting. It was me. It was me. You sound just like her. I know it's you. She says, don't lie to me. I hate it when people lie to me, and I know you're lying. And I thought, oh goodness, this is going nowhere. I should just hang up. But at the same time, I felt like I needed to help her understand that truly this wasn't me, so that she wouldn't keep calling me back or try to find me. I just wanted to give her peace of mind. And I wanted to figure out why this was happening because I was worried maybe other people would call me and say the same thing. So I was trying to figure this out and make sense of it. And I was being so polite. And the more polite I was, the more rude and angry and attacking she became. And finally, I calmed her down enough that she said, well, maybe this is a part of a scam and someone has stolen your phone number and they're using your number to make these calls so people think it's you. And I thought, oh my gosh, yes, finally, she gets what I'm trying to say. We're on the same page, and now we can figure this out and be good. And I said, yes, that's probably what's happening. And I said, but I want you to know that it might be happening to you too, because I have been getting all these numbers today as well with that same recording you're talking about, and And maybe they're using your number as well, because your number looks similar to all the other numbers that have been calling me. And I haven't hit call back. So maybe if I were to hit call back on them, I would get an innocent person like you or me. And right when I said that, it like flipped a switch in her mind or triggered something, and all of a sudden she just exploded on me and said, no, who am I kidding? Why am I even talking to you about this? You're her. You're the lady on the recording. You're the one who keeps calling me and harassing me. I am calling the police right now. I am reporting you. You are evil, evil, evil. And she just went on and on about how horrible I am and how dare I do this to people, and on and on and on. And part of me thought, well, this is so ridiculous that I have no reason to feel upset or angry, because obviously this isn't me doing this to her and she doesn't understand that. But because I know I'm innocent, you know, really I should just hang up and just let this go. It shouldn't bother me. But the more angry she got, the more it bothered me. And so finally I realized it wasn't going anywhere, and I just so kindly said, you know what, I've said it over and over again, and I'm going to say it one last time. I'm not the one who called you. I don't know who it is that's calling you or me, but I've been getting the same calls. I can't make sense of this, but all I can tell you is that it's not me. I would never do that. I haven't called anyone today. And I'm going to hang up now because I've said my piece. And I'm going to also block your number. And I hope that fixes things for both of us. And then I hung up. And then I immediately blocked her number. And I reached out to my husband and said, what in the world was this? This just totally came out of left field. I wasn't expecting this today, and it just totally threw me off. And he said, well, that's really strange. I'll have to look into it. You know, that's crazy. You've been getting all these calls. And then I got off the phone with him and I realized, oh my goodness, it's the adversary. It's the adversary. He knows I'm doing this message today. He knows how awesome and important it is. And he wants to do whatever he can to remove the spirit from me and get me off focus, get me off track, so that either this message doesn't happen at all or I won't have the right spirit with me when I deliver it. So I was on to him, and I thought, nope, he's not going to win today. And so far, he's not. So that happened. Then after that, I was doing some chores, getting things done in the house. I like to listen to uplifting music, videos, podcasts, all different kinds of things, scriptures, conference talks. So I was looking for things to listen to, and all of a sudden, this box pops up on my phone that says error, and it's flashing like this right on my screen, and it's frozen my screen, so I can't get out of it. So I have to shut everything down, turn everything back on, go back in, start all over, and then this error comes up again. Well, this happened 4 times. I've never seen anything like this before, ever, on my iPhone. So I finally realized, well, you know what, I'll just find another way to listen to something uplifting. I just won't do it this way. So I worked my way around it. But I thought, that is strange. And then shortly after that, my son got upset about something, and you know, he's 4 years old, and every now and then I've had him and another one of my kids, when they get so frustrated or they're hungry or tired and they can't get what they want, they'll say something such as, I hate you, you're the worst mom in the world. Maybe some of you understand, you've had that happen before. And in the moment, I was so prepared for this, because I saw that the adversary was on to me today. And I told myself, no, that's not my son. That's the adversary working through my son. It's the adversary saying, I hate you. You're a terrible mom. You're the worst mom in the world. He's trying to get under my skin, and he's trying to steal my joy and take that spirit away from me so that I can't deliver this message today. And it's not gonna work. He's not gonna win. And so I was able to stay in my joy, keep my peace, and was all ready to deliver this message. Recorded about an hour of it and then realized it wasn't working, and spent another 30-something minutes trying to figure it out, realized it wasn't ever going to be figured out. So I just went live right away. I just bypassed the whole scheduling, and so here we are. So I'm just telling you, that's funny that was actually part of my notes today, was to talk about the adversary and how he played a role in trying to stop this message today. But he's not going to win. He is not going to win. So having said all of that, let's just get right into this message because it truly is awesome, and I'm so excited to share it with you guys. Okay, so you all know that this is a video where I'm going to share with you what happened at our first event that we did with our Believers Building Bridges tour in Missouri. And that was not this last weekend, but the weekend before. And I wrote down just all of my favorite experiences because there were so many awesome things that happened. I knew that I wouldn't have enough time to share them in a video. In fact, it took me about 3 days just to share them with my sister over the phone. Like about 2 hours per phone call. And I realized I can't keep doing that. I'm just going to put this all into a video message, and then anytime someone asks, about it, they want to hear about how it was, I'm just going to give them this link, and it will save me a lot of time. So I'm excited to share with you though. All right, so I'm going to kind of go back and share with you just in order from when I first arrived till when I left. And so the day that I left to go to Missouri, it was a rainy, cold day. It was gloomy. And when I landed in Missouri, it was the same type of weather, rainy, cold, gloomy. And I just remember thinking, even though it looked gloomy and it looked rainy, I truly felt warm. It felt like sunshine and sparkle, like dazzling everywhere. It just felt so bright, and I was so happy to be there. And I was wearing yellow too, so maybe that helped. But anyways, I took a lot of pictures, and so everything I'm about to share with you, I got pictures of a lot of these things, and I've posted them on all of my Facebook pages, and I've also shared it on our GoFundMe campaign. So if you go there and you scroll down, you'll get to see a lot of our pictures and read a little bit more about what we did at that first event. So I just wanted to share that. All right, so I landed there, and I'm at the airport. I grab my bag, I go out, and I'm looking for Lynn because he's my ride. And he messages me and says, "Hey, look for the car with the broken headlight," because I hit a deer. So that wasn't hard to do. I see his car coming. Sure enough, he's got the broken headlight with tape over it, and I realize, okay, that's Lynn. So he pulls up, and I get in, and then I realize we're going to be picking up Mark. Mark is another team member on our team who lives in New Hampshire. So Mark and I were the only ones at this event who flew in. Everyone else coming to this event already lives in Missouri. So we picked up Mark, and as we got in the car, I'm going to show you what I saw because I took a picture of it. So I see this license plate that says 311, and I was so excited. I took a picture of it, but I don't think anyone noticed. They would have questioned it, I'm sure. And I took a picture of that, and to me, what that meant, the reason I was so excited, is because to me, it was just another witness that the Lord was with me, that He was there, and He was saying to me, this is 311 work. This is truly the work that you should be doing, third day power in this 11th hour. This is it right here, what you're about to do. And so I was super excited. And as we got driving and I got talking with Mark and Lynn, we started talking about some things, and then I just shared with them because I kept seeing the number. And I said, all right, I'm going to share something with you. You'll probably think I'm a little bit strange, but I just wanted to let you know that I see the number 311 and sometimes 113 all the time. And it has a special meaning for me. So for some reason, the Lord likes to use that to get my attention because He knows those numbers have meaning for me. And so because you're with me, you're probably going to also see those numbers a lot this weekend. So I'm just warning you. And right when I said that, Lynn's mouth was wide open and his eyes were wide open, but he was waiting for me to stop talking. And when I was done, he said, okay, you're not going to believe this, but when you were just explaining that, right when you said 113, I look up and we passed this building and the address on the building in huge, huge numbers, it covered like a fourth of the top of the building, was 113. He says, wow. And we both said, you just can't make this up. So that was pretty awesome. So he saw 113 right as I said 113. That was a witness for him, a witness for me, probably a witness for Mark. And so we keep on driving. And that was just the beginning of all the times we saw that number. which I'll get to a little bit later on, but that was just funny how the Lord started out our trip that way with those numbers. So it was awesome. So I could feel His presence there. And I forgot to say, I want to just say hi and give a shout out to all the new friends that I've made over the weekend. I've had a lot of people connecting with me, and I'm just thrilled with all the new friendships I've made. So if you're joining us on this video, I just want to say hi, welcome, and I can't wait to get to know you even more. So thanks for joining us. Okay, so I was thinking about how when I left, right before I left on this trip, my husband said to me, he said, you know, you've had a crazy week, you know, because I talked about in my last video message how the adversary was really relentless. And I realized, well, and a lot of you reached out to me as well, especially live during that message, and said, oh, it's happening to me too. I totally get what you're talking about. Different challenges, but I get it. Or I'm even having the same challenges as you are. So there were a lot of you out there who were experiencing that and feeling that and saying it was just a crazy week. Lots of things totally coming out of nowhere and blindsiding you and just throwing you off course and really shaking things up in your life. That's how I felt. And so it was sort of a comfort to know I wasn't the only one, that a lot of you were going through the same thing. So my husband was aware of that, and he just said, you know, maybe it's a good thing you're going to Missouri because this will give you a chance to have a break, sort of like a little vacation. You know, you'll go away for a couple days, get away from everything, come back totally refreshed. Now, when he said that, I laughed because I knew that wasn't going to be the case. The Lord had been telling me that this was going to be a weekend of service and work, and I knew that. I knew I was going to go into this weekend just rolling up my sleeves, getting my hands in the work, and just serving, praying, working 24/7. And that's exactly what happened. And so I had been sleep deprived all week, and he was just hoping that would be a way for me to catch up. And I said, nope, it's not going to happen. But yeah, I came back really tired, really exhausted, a little bit dehydrated, but all for a good cause. So I just had to share that. I thought that was funny. That's what he thought this would be for me, a little vacation. So anyways, we totally did. We served and prayed and worked 24/7. I'll say I probably got about 3 hours of sleep both nights that I was there. And so it was a lot of just a lot of awesomeness, just a lot to process. So all right, so when we got there, we got into Independence, and Lynn said, would you guys like a tour? Do you want to see a little bit of, you know, do a little bit of sightseeing? And we said, of course, show us around. So he took us down to the temple lot location. And if you've ever been to Independence, Missouri, you'll know that there's so much in that little area. You've got the temple lot with the cornerstones. You've got this little white church that sits on the property. You've got a stone church just across the parking lot from there. You've got the Latter-day Saints Stake Center across the street. You've got the Visitor Center. You've got the Community of Christ Church, and it looks like I've got pictures of all this, but it's that cool looking temple. And you have all of this sitting so close to each other. And so Lynn said, you know, I want to share with you my experience when I first came to this area 30-something years ago. Now, I'd heard this before, and I'd read it in his book. It's awesome. But it was fun to hear it again from him in the moment of where it actually happened. And he shares this story of how when he first moved to the Independence area, I think he moved from Kansas City. I think so. And he said that there's just so much happening in that city, and he was getting to know everyone. He was, you know, getting to know the place, and he one day came to that area where all those sightseeing attractions are, and he tells the story so much funnier than I can, but he basically says that he went to each little spot, and he'd go inside and say, hi, can I have the tour? Can you show me around, you know, explain to me? And they all would. And then whenever he would point across the street or across the way and say, okay, can you tell me about that? Or who are they? He said no matter where he was, the people there, the church there, would say to him, oh, don't pay any attention to those people over there. They're the apostates. They've apostatized. And so he said he just got that from every little place he went to, and it was sort of funny. And he thought, well, my goodness, how can that be? It's such an amazing place with such amazing history. So much has happened here, and I'm really feeling the spirit of this all, and it's all so new to me, and I want to learn, but when I reach out, I'm hearing that every little group here is an apostate. So if they're all saying that about each other, then are they all apostates? So he just sort of laughed at that and thought, oh dear, something needs to be done here. And so that's actually what started his passion for building bridges in his community, was because of that. And he realized that you had so much going on in that little area, so much diversity, so many different churches, but none of them were talking to each other. They were all in their own little bubbles, and they had up their walls, and they would never, ever work together. And so he wanted to change that. So for 30-something years, that's been his mission. He's just been working day in and day out, bringing these people together, bringing these groups together, and helping them tear down their walls and learn to talk to each other and work together and focus on what they have in common instead of what they have that makes them different. And so he's been really successful at that. And then, of course, you know the story. Last year, the voice of the Lord came to him when he was driving one day down the highway and said, it's time. It's time to take this beyond Independence and Utah, and it's time to take it nationwide. We have to start bringing everyone together. So that's how this started, and it was so awesome to hear him tell that story in the location where it all began. So it was pretty awesome. So we were there, and we took pictures of the cornerstones, and he said, if you wouldn't mind, let's take a moment and just sort of walk around and pray. Let's pray over this area. Let's pray over the city. Let's pray before we get going and we launch everything tonight. And so I thought that was a great idea. So we walked around separately and went off, and we walked in circles around the temple lot area, and we each just prayed and took that time to talk to the Lord and bless the area, bless the city, and bless the event that we were launching that night. So that was pretty awesome. So after that, we headed on over. We went over to the visitor center, and we went inside, and if you know Lynn, he just has a sense of humor unlike anyone else. And he walked in, and he just starts joking around and sharing jokes about, you know, he's a Baptist minister, and he loves the Book of Mormon, and it just kind of throws everyone off. And the cute missionaries that were working in the volunteer or in the visitor center were not sure what to think about him. And so it was funny. It was really funny. And eventually they got the hang of his humor and realized who we were. We explained what we were doing and why we were there. And then they gave us a tour. And at the end of that tour, Lynn opened up and shared with them his testimony about all of this and gave a little bit of a background of his story and what led him up to where he is today. And it was so incredible. It was so beautiful. The Spirit was so strong. He had tears running down his face. I was watering up. The missionaries were watering up. And it was just an incredible moment. And so we left the visitor center. And I'm telling you this because it has to do with something I'm going to share later. So we left the visitor center, and we realized it was time to go. It was time to get back, and we got in the car, head over to the little mansion house where the event was taking place, and there were already people pulling up and bringing in food and tablecloths and setting up the chairs and the tables, and so we went in and started helping, and that's when I started meeting everyone for the first time. You know, we have these conference calls all the time. We've had for almost a year now, but we've never actually met in person. So this was the first time I got to meet a lot of the team members in person, so I was excited. And so I remember I was in the building, and people were slowly coming in, and I was helping arrange all the food, and I have to say, just so you know, just to paint the scene, it's this really neat mansion. It's a really old mansion in Independence, Missouri. I think it was built in 1830 something, so it's very, very old. And I think that sounds about right, 1830 something, and it's just falling apart. It's really old. There's a widow who lives there and runs the place, but she doesn't have the money to keep it up, so it's crumbling. But she has a building out back in a parking lot that she lets people use for functions and activities, and it has a little stage and a sound system and a kitchen, and so it's a perfect little place to have an event like this. So that's where we were. And there's a neat story Lynn tells how Joseph Smith actually talked about this particular mansion in one of his journals. And so he said, yeah, you can read about it. He talked about this mansion in one of his journal entries, and so I'd love to find that and read it. But he said that eventually all the mansions in that area were burned down because of the Civil War. Most of the people who owned the mansions were for slavery, and so after the war was over, they were told, if you don't change your ways, we're going to burn down your home. And most of them did not change, and so their mansions were burnt to the ground, and this is the only mansion that survived. So it's got a pretty neat history. But anyways, so we're in the little building, and I'm helping set things up, and all of a sudden I see Lynn talking to Pastor Billy. And Pastor Billy is someone I've really wanted to meet because on our phone calls, his energy is so amazing. He has such a strong passion for all of this. And I can just sense that. I can feel that every time we have a conference call. And so I've always thought he's someone I'd really like to meet. And so I came in, and Lynn saw me, and he brought me over and introduced me, and Pastor Billy standing there with his wife. And they're looking at me, and all of a sudden he just points at me, and he says, she's got it. She has got it. And he's just staring at me, just locked in the stare. And I'm thinking, what do I have? And he says, she's got it. He just kept saying, she has got it. She has it. And Lynn said, oh, what does she have? And he said, I have a gift where I can look in someone's eyes, and I can see the relationship that they have with the Lord. I can tell by just looking in their eyes if they have a relationship with the Lord or if they don't. And he said he looked in my eyes and he saw it. And he said, she has a relationship with the Lord. I can see it. And I'm feeling it right now. And I just was amazed by that he would say that and notice that. And it was just awesome. And so I don't know, it just really made my night. That just has stuck with me ever since. And so he could feel that, and it really helped me have a little bit more confidence in myself and really feel the presence of the Lord in that room that night. So I got to meet everybody, and more people kept coming in, and it was just really exciting. And I just loved hearing everyone's stories. I've learned that everyone has a story, and there's just not enough time, unfortunately, to hear everyone's journey. But I would love to, if time didn't exist, I mean, in this life, if we didn't have to worry about time, I would just sit there forever and just listen to everyone's story and their journey, because I just love that. But everyone had a story, and I would ask everyone, so tell me about why you're here, why you're doing this, what's your story? And that was one of my favorite parts about this whole event. So I got to hear a lot of awesome stories. And so that night we had dinner, and my friend who I got to meet, Annette, she'll probably be watching this eventually, but Annette, she had watched my videos before, so she had reached out to me and said, hey, I live near Independence, so if you come, let's meet up. And so I said, okay, absolutely. And so I connected her with Lynn, and Lynn invited her to that event. And so she showed up with her husband, and I was so excited to meet her. And so they came and sat with us, and I sat by Pastor Billy and his wife, and we were all just kind of spread out throughout the room having dinner. And anyways, the night got started, and Pastor Steve, I have so many names in my mind, I'm so sorry if I get any of them wrong, but but it was Pastor Steve who was sort of conducting the night and said, okay, I was kind of put in charge of how this night will go. So he said, let's just start by having everybody get up and share their story just for 5 minutes. Share with us about your past, your present, and your future connected to all of this. And that was all he said. So Lynn got up and Lynn shared his story, and I remember thinking, well, I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't know if I'd be talking, or, you know, a lot of us just came not really knowing what to expect or what we would be asked to do or any of that. And I hadn't been, you know, prepared in advance. We're going to have you talk or share your testimony or any of that. So I just had no idea. So he said, we're going to have every team member come up and just talk for 5 minutes and share with us your story. So that was pretty awesome because I got to hear everyone's story at that time. So when it was my turn to go up, I just opened up and I just let whatever flowed into my mind and into my heart. That's what I shared. And I just shared my story of how religion was actually what tore apart my mom's family, because it was religion that created those divisions. And what I mean by that, I don't know if I've shared this before, I may have, but some members of my mom's family, they left our church, and they had some reasons why, and I believe it had to do with being offended and things of that nature. And so they left, and everybody pretty much left except for my mom. And they moved far away from Utah, and I hadn't actually seen my grandma since I was 18, or a little bit after that. Shortly after that, I saw her, I think, at my brother's wedding, and then I hadn't seen her for all these years. And so we went out a couple years ago and saw her for the first time since then, out in Tennessee. She's in a nursing home out in Tennessee, and I brought 2 of my kids, and we went out on a little trip and got to see her, and it was their first time meeting her. But yeah, my aunt and my grandma, they moved away, and I just have memories as a child when this happened. I just remember they would always tell us, you haven't been saved, you haven't been saved, and until you get saved, you're going to hell. And that was all we heard, and it was all we heard, and it got to the point where it was just so uncomfortable being around them and sharing anything that might trigger that conversation. We had to be so careful and walk on eggshells, and I was always afraid, and it was so awkward, and I always felt that they were, you know, judging us when they saw us and saw us as really bad people who were not going to make it to heaven. And so that was really hard. And they would always bring anti-materials to our home and give us pamphlets and tell us to read them and tell us we need to get saved. And I just really struggled with that. It was not pleasant for me as a child, for any of us. And so that's kind of how my mom's story goes. So I shared that story and said, that's when I realized one day, it can't be this way. Why should differences in doctrine tear people apart and tear apart families? Because God is all about family. He's all about the family unit. He's all about unity and relationships and bringing everyone together in love. And Satan is all about the opposite of that. He's about tearing families apart and division and focusing on our differences and letting that be a wall. And I thought, why does it have to be that way? It shouldn't have to be that way. If we're truly listening to the Spirit, it's not that way. But when we're not following the Spirit and we're following the adversary, that's how it is. And so I knew at a young age that the Lord didn't want that to happen to our family. He didn't want it to happen to any family. That religion shouldn't be something that tears people apart. That's not the purpose for it. It's just not what it's about. And so, but unfortunately, that's what happens a lot of the times. So I had a passion at a young age to see all of that change. And so, you know, then I talked about my present and how I got involved in this movement and how I was so excited because what this movement meant was that we could all come together in the agreement that we don't want to change each other's beliefs and we don't want to talk about and discuss doctrine and our differences, but we want to respect that we all have our own beliefs and we all have our churches that we belong to, and we want to have a respect for that. But instead, we want to focus on what we have in common. And that's our love for our Savior Jesus Christ. We recognize that He is Lord and King of all of us, that He came to this earth, He suffered for our sins, He atoned for them, He died for us, and He was resurrected, and He's coming back. That's something that we can all agree on. And so that's what we should unite on, and that's what we should use to bring us together. And so I shared how I was so excited to be a part of this because that's what I believe, and I want to see that happen. I am done with all of this division on every level, politically, religious, just every possible level throughout this, not just our country, but all throughout the world. There's so much division, and it's causing wars, it's causing bloodshed, it's causing all kinds of craziness, and it doesn't have to be that way. It's not how it's going to be when the Lord comes back and when He's ruling and reigning on this earth. It's not going to be like that at all. And we're still all going to be different. We're not all going to belong to the same church. We'll all believe in the Savior, and we'll all recognize that He is Lord and King, but we'll still be different, and that's okay. And it's got to be something that we work on now so that He can return, because He's going to return to a peaceful, loving people. And so that's why I got involved with this. That's why I was so passionate about it, because I've always been a fan of that. I've always felt that this is what needs to happen before the Lord can return, and I want to be a part of that. It's been said to me in my patriarchal blessing, very specific wording that has to do exactly with this. And so I know this is a part of my mission. That's probably why I'm so excited about it. And so that was my story. So anyways, I was, of course, in tears and sobbing. I wasn't as put together as I am right now when I was sharing this. And Pastor Steve said, okay, you guys, after each person shares their story, I would like for each of you to come sit in this chair over here one at a time. So you'll get up, share your story, and then walk over here and sit in this chair. And just whoever feels inclined to, let's come up and pray for each other. Let's just bless each other and pray over each other as we embark on this event, as we embark on this tour, so that we get started on the right foot and we get started with the Lord's blessing, and we just want to be prepared. And so I was touched by that, and I shared, I said, I just think that's awesome that we have this opportunity and this invitation to pray for each other. And in that moment, it was so awesome to see that it doesn't matter how differently we all pray, how differently we all worship, because in the end, it's about what's in our heart, and the Lord sees that. And He's using that to bring us together, to make this happen. And you could just feel it so strong in the room that night. You could just feel everyone's heart, and everybody was on the same page as far as where their heart was. You could feel this love in the room and this peace, and it was just incredible. And so I was just humbled and just feeling so blessed that we could all have an opportunity to pray for each other in the way that we feel comfortable praying, and in the way that we are used to doing, with no judgment whatsoever. So I love that. So we each took our turn, and when it was my turn to go up, I sat down and closed my eyes, and just immediately, one person at a time, people just began praying over me. And some people were speaking words of knowledge over me, and others were just pronouncing blessings over me and praying for my mission with all of this. And I don't even remember, to be honest, what was said. I don't remember the specifics of what everyone said. All I can remember is the feeling that I felt. It was so strong. And I was describing this to my sister. I said it felt like Pastor Steve was putting his hands on everyone's head and just praying. He was just praying over them. And when he put his hands on my head and began praying, I just felt this electricity, like almost like static electricity, like tingly, just tingly coming down inside of me, and everything inside of me started to tingle and vibrate. And it felt like I was sitting in one of those vibrating chairs. Like everything just inside of me was tingling and vibrating and so warm, and it just felt like warm coming down, warm coming down. You could just feel the love coming out of Pastor Steve through his hands into me. And then everyone else who came up afterwards and put a hand on my shoulder or a hand on my arm or, just whatever, and express their prayers as well. You could just feel it coming from them. It was just all this warm energy, tingling. I don't know how to describe it, but it was awesome. And it did something to me, and it was probably very healing for me, but it just opened something up inside of me, and the floodgates just released. And I just started just to cry, and I had a sister holding this hand and someone else holding this hand, and I couldn't use my hands to wipe my tears, and so the tears just ran down, and my shirt was just soaked. And my pants had puddles on them, and I just felt so blessed and so humbled and so grateful. And then I went and sat down, and the next person came and told their story and sat in the hot seat. And Pastor Steve said, "Lindsey, come back. You're not done." And he invited me, would you do the same for everyone else? Would you also pray for them? So I was totally caught off guard by that, but at the same time, happy to do that and humbled. And so I did the same. I prayed for my fellow team members, and it was just crazy. I remember thinking, but I don't really know these people. I don't know them well enough to know what to pray over them. But it didn't matter, because as I held their hand or put my hand on their shoulder, as soon as I came into that contact with them, it's like things started flowing into my mind of what to say, what to ask for, what to pray for. I saw things, I heard things, and so it was like I was getting these little downloads of knowledge about each person. And so I could almost feel the desires of their heart. I could feel things that they were struggling with, things that they were needing and wanting and asking the Lord for. I could feel what was on their heart. I could hear what was on their mind. It's just the strangest thing ever, you guys. And I will say that when they were praying over me, I think it was Pastor Steve. Like I said, I forgot most of everything that was said, but the one thing I do remember was that he prayed that my spiritual gifts would be opened and magnified, and that I would even receive new gifts and be able to use those to do this work and to help serve and bless everyone. And so I started thinking maybe that's what I was feeling, as all that tingling was coming in and things were opening up and the floodgates were turned on to the fullest capacity ever. Maybe that's what was happening, is I was feeling these gifts turn on and activate, and all of a sudden I was knowing things and hearing things, and it was incredible. And so I did, with every person, just about every person that sat in the seat, I had a word come into my mind of what to pray for or what to say to them, and it was incredible. I've never experienced anything quite like it. So it was really an eye-opener and just really amazing. And so that room was on fire. And by the time we were all done at the end of the night, I was so exhausted. I was so tired. I was dehydrated. I was so thirsty. No matter how much water I drank, I felt like I still needed more. And I really feel like that when you really exercise your gifts and you really pray with all your heart, which requires a lot of your senses, because you have to really hold still and listen and trust and think, and sometimes you're not even thinking, it's just coming and you're just saying whatever's coming, but it takes so much energy out of you that it really is draining. And it reminded me of in the scriptures in the New Testament when you read about the Savior and how he was constantly around the multitudes and serving and blessing and speaking to them, and there would come a time when even he needed to get away. So he would go up into the mountain, or he would get on a boat and drift out to sea a little bit, just so he could have that time to recoup. So that's kind of what it felt like. It just felt like, yeah, it really does take a lot of energy out of you, but it's for a good reason. So it's like you're tired, but you're happy. It's like happy tired. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what we were experiencing. So we were just overwhelmed at the end of the night with so much love and so much gratitude. And that first night was just a get to know you night. It was an introduction of meeting everyone on the team, getting to know everyone, and praying for each other. And so that's what we did. And so that night, we went home and I went back. I was staying with Marilyn. She was hosting me. So I went with Marilyn and her husband, and they drove me to their place. And we were in the car, and she said, honey, tell her about your healing story. Tell her about your miracle that happened today. And I was like, oh, I love this kind of stuff. Please share. So he's driving, and he says, yeah, I woke up this morning, and I was blind. He said, I had eye surgery a little while ago, and everything healed up. Everything was great. Vision was great. And then all of a sudden, I woke up this morning, and I had all these black little floaters in my eyes, and I couldn't see, and it scared me. And I went into the doctor. The doctor looked at it, and he didn't have any good news for me. He said it would probably stay this way, and he was sorry there was nothing he could do. Well, he said, when I got home, I said, oh no, there's something I can do. I can pray, and I can ask my wife to pray over me. And he shared how his wife, Marilyn, has this incredible faith, and she has witnessed and helped manifest so many miracles in her life because of her faith. And I've heard her stories before. I've heard her share a story about growing someone's thumb back. Someone she met on the street, I think it was a homeless person. She was sharing the gospel with this person and saw that, I can't remember if it was a he or a she. I'm going to guess it was a he. He didn't have a thumb. And she could tell that that was really difficult for him. And so she said, can I pray over your thumb? And he said, sure, why not? It won't hurt. So she prayed over his thumb, and all of a sudden a new thumb grew right before their eyes. And I've heard her share this before, and I just love hearing it every time. It never gets old, and I know the kind of faith that she has. And so I wasn't surprised one bit when he said, I came home, I asked her to pray over my eyes, and she did. She prayed over them and commanded that they be healed. He said, after she ended the prayer, I went to bed. I was so tired, I fell asleep. When I woke up, my eyes were healed, and here I am. I wouldn't even be here. I wouldn't have come to this event tonight had my eyes not been healed. I wouldn't be driving right now. And I love that story. And we get back to their house, and it's already after 11. It was about 11:30. And he said, you know, we usually go to bed really early around here, but if you wouldn't mind, can we all stay up and talk a little bit more? And I said, sure. I love to talk. I love to hear stories. Let's do it. So we all stayed up, and we shared our personal, our background and our experiences and everything in more detail than what we shared at the dinner. So we shared just a little bit more, and we ended up talking till about 2 in the morning, almost 2 to 2:30 in the morning. So I went to bed really late, but the spirit was so strong in that conversation that I just didn't want to leave it. We were all fighting our sleep. We were all so tired, but we just had so much we wanted to share, so much that was on our heart. And so they just had some incredible stories to share, just incredible people. And so that was the first night. And something that I noticed that a lot of people would tell me is that they'd say, you know, there's just something about you. It's probably your gift, but there's just something about you where everyone just feels so comfortable talking to you. Everyone just feels like they can open up to you about anything, and you won't judge them, and you'll embrace what they're sharing with you, and it just feels so awesome. And I get told that all the time, so I guess that is one of my gifts. I just have this ability to listen and embrace what people share with me. So my sister has the same gift as well. She gets told that all the time. So anyways, the next morning we get up bright and early, get ready for our day to go back to the mansion house and launch the actual event. This was the event where they had invited all the local church leaders. So there was different pastors and leaders of different churches and the stake president of the Independence Latter-day Saint stake, just right in that area. So they were all coming. And this is when we were going to explain to them what we were doing, because Lynn thought it would be a really good idea to, instead of just going right into this tour and, you know, shaking up the cities that we go to, he thought it would be wise to go in first and meet with all the churches and let them know who we are, what we're doing, what our goal is, so that they don't judge us in the wrong way or get the wrong idea and work against us. So just kind of to bring everyone together so we can work together. So that's what this was about. So we go out there and we bring in the food and everyone's coming, and I'm meeting more people that weren't there the night before. I'm meeting even more friends and family and people who were involved in this, and it was just so much fun. And so it was just so awesome. So I forgot to mention the night before, but also the next day we had an hour or so of worship music. And so the music on day 2 was live music. So we had a guy there who was really talented. He had a guitar and was playing different worship songs, and the words were up on the screen so everyone could sing along. And everyone was just encouraged and invited to sing along and participate however they felt comfortable. So you could see how different we all are in the way that we worship, but the feeling was the same. So even though you had some people standing up with their arms up and just swaying and dancing and shouting the music, and then you had other people that were more quiet and kind of whispering the songs, and some people had their eyes closed, and some people were clapping their hands and dancing, and everyone just was so different. But the feeling was the same. You could feel the same amount of love coming from everyone. So that was the best part. So on the second day, we sang, had the music, and it was catered. They brought in some local barbecue, which was amazing, and we fed everybody there. And then they introduced the state president, President Cato, and he came up and shared what they're doing in the City of Independence. He's doing something so awesome, and I just kind of lost the name of it. Can't think of what it's called, but I'll share later. I'll put a link down below. But they've started this movement in Independence where he's doing something similar, and he's joined with all the local churches and just anybody who wants to be a part of this. Doesn't matter what church you belong to. And they all come together and they meet, I think, once a week, and they talk about how they can improve their community. And this is so awesome. I want to share this with you because for all of you out there, if you're, serving on any committees or you have the ability to help bring something like this to your city, I think this is something that will just spread and really what will change our country just overnight. So he's doing amazing things, and so they're taking care of the homeless, the lonely, and the widows, and they're doing so many things. They're educating the homeless. I mean, you don't have to have any professional experience. If you want to be involved, you come to the meeting and they put you right to work, and they find something for you to do. And so they've divided up the whole city, and so put everybody in different committees and groups, and some are over just the homeless, some are over the lonely and the widows, and they oversee those streets and those neighborhoods and go through and check on everyone and make sure if there's somebody that doesn't need help or needs food or needs a job or needs their plumbing fixed or their roof fixed, and they just go around and they work together to build up their city and their community. And he just shared how that's what Christ was all about. That's what he did. He just, loved everyone, and it didn't matter who they were. He served everyone and wanted to help everyone, and that's their mission. And he gave such a powerful message and just really united everyone in that room. It was so awesome. And he brought 2 bishops from the state with him, and they were there with him. And then he had to leave after that, so he left. And then Lynn called me up and had me share some experiences. So I got called up to do that, and I shared some experiences on the spot. And then he went right into his presentation. Pastor Billy got up and shared a word as well. And then Lynn went into his presentation and presented that message to all the leaders. And there were so many that came. We had about 50 people, which is what we had planned for, so that was great. And the room was full, and he just shared that mission and shared that message. And after it was over, everybody was just so excited to come talk to each other. And he said, okay, don't be shy. Come up and find a member of the team and come talk to us more about what we're doing. If you have questions, find a team member. We'll answer them. And if there's anybody in the room who wants to be prayed for, if you need some personal ministry, if you, need a blessing or need a prayer, whatever it is, come up and find someone, and we'll be glad to do that for you. And so, the event ended, and it was awesome. I'm leaving out so much, you guys. And all of a sudden, around each of us, a line started to form, and people were coming up to us, please, could you pray over me? Or please, could you give me a word of comfort? Or I have this trial going on in my life, or I'm in pain, or I'm physically dealing with this, and I need help. And it was just so awesome. Hi. Huh? Just will you do you need some tape? Hold on one second. Here, honey. Here you go. Do you want to just do that real quick? Oh, I'm live on a video. I can't. It's gonna be another hour. Yeah, here, I'll just throw this out there. Okay, sorry. He's a drum teacher, my son is, and so he has students coming and he needs some help with some things. So I was supposed to be done by now, but we had those technical problems. But anyways, long story short, it was really awesome, and we were able to pray for a lot of people. And each person that we sat down, I would ask them, is there something specific you need prayers for? What's going on? And they all opened up and just had the most heartfelt stories, and it was just incredible. And so I prayed for so many people. I've never prayed that much for so many people in my entire life. It really was something new for me, sad to say, and I got thinking about it, and something that I learned from this event that I want to share with you that I hope we can see more of, no matter what church you go to, is that what I loved is anybody, no matter where we were at any time, somebody mentioned something like, oh, I'm struggling with this, or oh, please keep me in your prayers for that. It's like someone's antenna would go up and they would hear it, and all of a sudden all these people like magnets would swarm in. You need prayer. Let us pray for you right now. And just on the spot, everyone would close their eyes and pray, and not just one person. They would take turns, and whoever felt like praying would pray, and it was just praying 24/7, and this happened in public places as well. And I love that. And it made me think about where I live in my community. If somebody says, hey, keep me in your prayers, or I'm struggling with this, we might say something like, okay, well, I'll add you to my prayer list, or I'll pray for you tonight, or I'll keep you in my prayers. But we never say, can I pray for you right now? Let's stop everything we're doing and let's just pray right now. And you don't see this happen at the grocery store here. You don't see people swarming in like magnets. Did someone say prayer? Count me in. And that's just so normal there. Just people circling around you and just showering you with love and praying for you and just uniting in that faith. And I thought, gosh, that's what being a praying people should look like. It really should. When we go visit people in their homes, or bring them cookies, or check in on them, or whatever it is, and we realize they're struggling, we don't just say, oh, I hope it all gets better, I'll keep you in my prayers. Why don't we just stop in that moment and say, let me pray for you right now, and take a moment to really pray for them, and invite other people to join in, and drop what we're doing and just become a praying people. So that was something I really loved, that really stood out to me, that I would like to see more of in my own life. So I was really amazed by that. So we did a lot of praying, and people would say afterwards, wow, that did something to me, or I felt something shift inside of me, or I feel better now, or I just received the answer that I needed. And to me, that was a witness of the incredible faith. When faith like that comes together, miracles manifest. And that's just what we need more of. And so it was pretty awesome. I could tell you so many stories, but I'm running short on time. But I will say that there was one man I prayed for. His name was Paul, and he came to me and said, will you pray for me? And he shared specifics of what he needed prayers for. And he's a pretty awesome guy. I'm going to share some things about him in just a second, but he's Native American. and he has an incredible story. And I remember, and he's almost 80, and I remember thinking, really, you want me to pray for you? Because I wish you would pray for me. I feel like we should flip this around. You're older, you have more wisdom, you have incredible stories and experiences and spiritual gifts that I don't even compare, and you want me to pray for you? And I know that sounds terrible of me to say, but yeah, he did. He said, yeah, I do. I want you to pray for me, and I'll wait till you have the time to do it. And so I prayed for him, and he said that as I was praying, he could feel heat coming out of me. Just, it got really hot. There was all this heat. And another woman came forward, and she said a prayer over him, and she mentioned something about eagles. And that had meaning for him. And after the prayer, he said that meant something to me. And then I shared with him all the images of the eagles we've been seeing, and we had this incredible conversation. And this sort of stuff just happened all the time. And it was incredible. So anyways, I learned so much about so many of those people and just witnessed so many miracles. And that's what I love about this tour, is I know that that's what's going to happen in each city that we visit. Just more of this, more praying, more faith, more miracles, more unity, more love, more of what things should be like. This is how it should be. So I'm really excited about that, because I got to witness it firsthand and see what that's like. And I just want to keep sharing it. So anyways, that's how the day went. And finally, it was time for me to go. My ride was ready to go, and they had to get home, and I relied on other people to get me around, because, you know, I obviously didn't have a car. So I left, but before I left, I forgot to tell you, so many people came up to me and shared with me their books. And so this first one, David, if you're watching, I just want you to know I'm only a few pages in, but I am already so into this book. So this is someone on our team. His name is David Brown, and he's an author, and he writes on one of my favorite topics. And so I will be sharing more about his book in another video message, but first I have to finish it. So I was excited that he shared this with me. And then Paul, his wife, came up to me. Paul is the Native American that I was telling you about. He's amazing. He has so many stories. And his wife came up to me and she said, we want to give you some of these books. And she handed me his books and said, these are incredible stories that he shares that we think you need to know about. And we just felt like we needed to give you some of his books. So I said, okay, awesome. So I feel blessed. I've received so much reading material, and I'm going to learn even more awesome stories about these people. And I'm, of course, going to share with you. So stay tuned for that. I am so excited. So I just felt so blessed and so overwhelmed with gratitude, and it was incredible. So after that, we left, and I'm skipping a whole lot. In fact, before, I still have enough time to share this, I think. Before I move on to the next part of the video of my story, I just want to share with you a couple of awesome people who were at that event. They're not on the team, but they're somehow a part of it all. They're friends with everyone there. They're connected. And so they came, and I was blessed. I was blessed for meeting them. I know I was. And there's so many. I'm just going to share a couple of them. There was one woman, and she was incredible, and one of her friends was telling me a little bit about her from a distance, and she said, my friend is so amazing. She's this tiny little thing. She's just awesome. Just a spiritual giant, right? In a tiny body. And she's very, very wise in her years, and she was just, I just heard so much about her, but they were telling me about her and said, she is so awesome. She has this ability for years now. She has gone into the prisons. She goes into the prisons and goes into the deepest, darkest part of the prison, where I forget what it's called. Is it called Solitude? I don't know. That sounds like a ski resort. But it's the place where they put the hardest criminals, where they lock them up, and they are all alone, and they are locked in there all day, all night, and there's no light, no windows, and it's where the hardest criminals go. And that's the part where she would go. She goes into these prisons and she goes and finds the deepest, darkest part of the prison with the most hardened criminals, and she meets with them and she says to them something to the effect of, you probably know how to rob a bank, right? Like if I asked you how to rob a bank, you could tell me, right? And they say, yeah, I do know how to rob a bank, or I know someone who has, or, she talks about doing whatever it takes to get what you want. That's something they know about. They know about doing whatever it takes at all costs to get the one thing they want, whether it's drugs, money, whatever it is. And that's something they relate to. And then once she has them on the same page and they open up about that, she says, that is how the Lord feels about you. He will go through whatever lengths possible to get to you because you are his treasure and you are valuable. You are the treasure that you seek after, that you would do anything to get. That's what you are to him. And there isn't anything he wouldn't do to get through that. He would break down prison walls. No security can keep him back. He will do whatever it takes to get to you. And that's how much he cares about you. And that's what she would say. And that's what would speak to these criminals. And she would bring them to Jesus. And all of a sudden they would want to know more about him. They would want to have a relationship with him. They would start praying for the first time, and she would soften their hearts and tear down those walls around their hearts and melt their hearts and bring them to Jesus so they could feel his love. And she's so good at that. Such an incredible woman. And so she does that, and then they were telling me how she and some of the other people there have another ministry where they go to the streets at night. They go to the inner cities. And they not only do this with homeless people, but they do this with the prostitutes and the pimps. And they go into the darkest part of town at night when it's the most not safe to be there, right? That doesn't stop them. And they go in and they find these prostitutes and these pimps and they bring them to Jesus and they get them to leave behind that lifestyle and come to the Lord. And they were telling me the story of how there was this one street where they would keep the prostitutes in boxes and they would spend the night sleeping in these cardboard boxes. So they would work the prostitutes and have them go out and do their work and then bring them back, and they would crawl into these boxes like animals and sleep there. That's where they lived, was in these boxes. And this team of friends would go into these cities and into these nightclubs and wherever and preach the gospel and teach these people about Jesus Christ, who he is and what he's done for them. And every time they could get into their heart to those forbidden dark places that they block off to everyone else, but somehow these people, these women, could get into their hearts and pierce through and help them experience the love of Jesus Christ, and it just would change their world. And I just heard so many stories that I just was amazed, and I felt so honored and humbled to be in the same room with these people, all from different backgrounds, different churches, but all trying to do the same thing, share the gospel, share their love of their Savior and their testimony, and bring other people to him so that they can know him too. That's what I love about this. So just spiritual giants in that room, just so blessed to know them and meet them, and yeah, it was awesome. And these people were asking me to pray over them, and I just, I know it sounds terrible, but I just kept thinking, really, because I want you to pray over me. So I'm surprised, I don't have nearly as many incredible stories as you do, and you're wise beyond your years, and I just would love to have you pray over me. So anyways, that's how the whole weekend sort of went. It was just awesome. So anyways, all right, so I'm going to skip over some things. All right, so long story short, we went and saw all the awesome things that there's to see over there. I went and saw Liberty Gel, and Lynn took us to all these neat places, and we came back and we went and met a whole another group of people, and we went to their home and we helped pray and bless and serve everyone in that home, and we were there for a few hours till after midnight, just praying and sharing testimony and just experiencing the goodness of the Lord. It was just awesome. It was like church 24/7. And so that's another takeaway I got from this is, sometimes in my community, in my culture, with our traditions, it's like these sort of things only happen certain times of the week. At church on Sunday, if there's a special event like a wedding or a baptism or a missionary coming home or, something of that nature, that's when we talk about these things and have these special experiences and pray over each other and pray with each other, but it's not 24/7. And sometimes we think, well, church is just on Sunday, or church is just something we do in a church building. But from what I've witnessed this week, it should be everywhere you go. You should take it with you in your heart everywhere you go. And so I was just really amazed by that. And I just want to adopt that into my own life and practice what I saw. So I just love that. Anyways, all right, so the next day, Marilyn took me to meet Annette. So Annette offered to take me over to her place on Sunday, to where she lives, and go to church with her. And then she wanted to give me a tour of Adam on Diamond and that whole area. And she just had a lot she wanted to show me, so I was super excited. And so I went to Annette's ward and met her cute little family, and she played the organ, so I sat with her kids. And the speakers were so inspired that day. They all talked about the message of what I'm sharing in this video. They all talked about this theme of unity and oneness and coming together and not judging, and oh my gosh, it was incredible. Then we go to Relief Society, and it's the same message in there as well. And the sister that was teaching taught the same lesson. It was all about unity and oneness and coming together, and everyone was raising their hand and sharing stories, and just about everybody in that room was a convert. At one time in their life, they converted from a different church, and was just sharing their experiences of how they went from something so different, into something that was just a whole new world for them, and it took them time to adjust. And at first it was difficult to make the transition because they weren't used to these things, and the language, when you join a new church, you gotta get used to the words and the language that they use. It's different than what you're used to, and they were just sharing their stories and how important they realized it was to put down those walls of judgment and just love and just accept everyone, and it didn't matter about the differences. And anyways, I just was so touched by their stories, and so finally I raised my hand and said, I know nobody knows me, I'm a visitor, but that's exactly why I'm here. I'm here visiting your beautiful state of Missouri for that very reason, because I'm helping build bridges among the different churches and bringing everyone together. And that's what this is all about. And so that was pretty awesome that that's what the message was that day in church. So she passed out these poems. I'm just going to share this with you real quick. I loved it. It's by Sally DeFord, and it's called Make Us One. And when I got this, I thought, okay, I'm going to read this in my video. But it says, how shall we stand amid uncertainty? Where is our comfort in travail? How shall we walk amid infirmity, when feeble limbs are worn and frail? And as we pass through mortal sorrow, how shall our hearts abide the day? Where is the strength the soul may borrow? Teach us thy way. Make us one that our burdens may be light. Make us one as we seek eternal life. Unite our hands to serve thy children well. Unite us in obedience to thy will. Make us one, teach us, Lord, to be of one faith, of one heart, one in thee. Then shall our souls be filled with charity. Then shall all hate and anger cease. And though we strive amid adversity, yet shall we find thy perfect peace. So shall we stand despite our weakness. So shall our strength be, strength enough. We bring our hearts to thee in meekness. Lord, wilt thou bind them in thy love. Make us one that our burdens may be light. Make us one as we seek eternal life. Unite our hands to serve thy children well. Unite us in obedience to thy will. Make us one. Teach us, Lord, to be of one faith, of one heart, one in thee. Take from me this heart of stone and make it flesh even as thine own. Take from me unfeeling pride. Teach me compassion and cast my fear aside. Give us one heart, give us one mind. Lord, make us thine, oh, make us thine. Make us one that our burdens may be light. Make us one as we seek eternal life. Unite our hands to serve thy children well. Unite us in obedience to thy will. Make us one, teach us, Lord, to be of one faith, of one heart, of one in thee. I love that. Okay, you guys. So I went around and had this awesome day. Annette packed a picnic and we ate it in the car with her kids as we drove. And we went and visited this cute little church in far west Missouri at the other temple site. And the people at the church were there and they invited us in and gave us the tour and the history of their cute little church and congregation. And they were so sweet. They answered all of our questions and shared with us so much. And they said there was a husband and wife and they were co-pastors of the church. And she said, you know, if you were here any other Sunday, you could have sat down and had potluck dinner with us right now. But for some reason, we canceled our dinner this Sunday, so too bad, right? But she gave us a gift. She gave us both a CD of some beautiful hymns that someone in their church had recorded. And we share a lot of these same hymns in our hymn book. So it was just so awesome. I was so grateful to have met those people, to hear their story, to hear about their history, and get a tour of their church. It was so awesome. And Annette's just like me. She feels the same way. We both love being spontaneous and going on adventures and road trips and just meeting people and hearing their stories. So we did a lot of that. So we went to Adam-on-Diamond, and it was incredible. And the one thing I'm going to say about that is Annette pointed out to me, we went down to this place called Preacher Rock, where there is the remains of an old Nephite altar. And she said, just for a minute, just be quiet, just be silent. So we all were quiet for a minute. And she said, do you hear that? Do you notice that? And I listened and realized I heard absolutely nothing. There were no birds chirping. There were no animals. There was no wind. There was no sound at all, which is crazy because everywhere we had been that day, all over that area, there was wind, lots of cold, freezing wind. It was so windy. And there were animals. I saw raccoons and deer and birds everywhere, but it was so still and silent in that area. And she said, you can feel something happened here. And this is a place where you can come and pray, and your prayers will be heard, and you will hear back. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I could just be all alone, I would love to pray in this place. So it was so awesome. We ran into a family there on the way up. There was so much mud, you guys, and we were wearing our church clothes, and I was up to my ankles in thick Missouri mud. I learned about two things, Missouri potholes and Missouri mud. I had experiences with both. So something I'll never forget. But I was covered ankle deep in mud, and we're coming up this trail, and there's a family at the top of the hill, and we get talking to them. It turns out they're from Utah. Beautiful family, young family with kids, and they shared their story of how they were traveling from Utah. I forget where their destination was. I think Colorado. Well, anyways, they were coming, the group of kids that were with them were going to perform, and they had a big trailer full of props for their performance, and it broke down. The axle on the trailer actually snapped, and they were able to drive 800 miles on a broken axle, and when they finally came to a stop, the tires were flat and shredded, and everything was destroyed. But it turns out that the place where they finally stopped was the only place in hundreds of miles that happened to have the exact axle that they needed, and they only had one. So it was like the perfect place to break down. So they felt very blessed and talked about how the Lord had his hand in their life and on their trip, and had lots of stories to share, and just another testimony builder for me. So these kind of things happened everywhere we went in Missouri. We would run into people and hear their story, and it just felt like church all the time. Just people bearing witness of how good the Lord is and how he's blessed their lives and the miracles they've witnessed, and this was just 24/7. I realized that whole trip, that's all we ever heard about and talked about was the Lord and how awesome he is. So yeah, it was really good. So anyways, I get to the airport, and that drops me off, and I'm covered in mud, and I walk in, and at this airport they had us take our shoes off and put them up on the little conveyor belt. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So I take off my boots, I throw them up there, and mud just crumbles everywhere. There's like rocks and mud and grass, And I'm just like, oh dear, oh dear. And the TSA agent, she looked all serious and stiff, but the minute I threw my boots up there and the mud went everywhere, she just busted up and started laughing. And I looked at her, and at the same time we both said, Missouri mud. And then everyone in the line started laughing, and she's like, oh, sweetheart, honey, you don't even worry about it. I get it. You know, it's Missouri mud. It is what it is. You just move right along. And everyone was laughing, and it just kind of broke the ice, and it was a lot of fun. And then I find the nearest bathroom. I go into the bathroom. I'm scrubbing the mud. I've got my shoes in the sink. I'm wiping off my tights and my skirt, and I just, wherever I can find mud, I'm scrubbing it off. And there's this line of women trying to use the bathroom. They're all in line just watching me, and it's silent, and they're all staring at me. And so I look up at them, and I said, Missouri mud. And they all started laughing. And anyways, I met some fun people at that airport and had some great conversations, and just really kind people. So came back home and haven't been able to stop thinking about that weekend ever since. And so just wanted to say some thoughts I wrote down about this was that something I learned for myself is that prior to going to Missouri, I realized that there was something I was very ignorant about. And I'm just sharing this because it might be an eye-opener for other people as well. But something I was really ignorant about was that I just thought that everybody, especially in Missouri because of our common history with our church, I just thought that everybody, especially in Missouri, knew about my church, you know, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and knew the names of our leaders and knew, you know, just knew so much about us. And that wasn't true at all. And so I realized how terrible that was for me to think that way, because it's no different than me not knowing very much about them. I don't know the names of their leaders, and I don't know their terminology and their acronyms. And so there's a lot I don't know. And so for me to think that they knew a lot more about me and what I believe in my church was not the case. And that was a big eye-opener for me. It was really good for me to experience that. And I was reminded the night I was in Marilyn's home, and she said, you want a drink? And I said, sure. And she said, well, you're probably not allowed to have hot chocolate, are you? Isn't that against your word of wisdom? And I said, no, we can have hot chocolate, but I'm dehydrated. I'll just take water. And so that was funny. And then someone else asked me if we were okay to have herbal tea. I said, yes, we have herbal tea all the time, especially when we're sick. And then somebody else asked me, what was it? Oh, I forget now. Just some funny questions that people think about that don't know, that I never considered. And it's kind of fun to break down those stereotypes and just open up and share how it really is. So, oh yeah, I used the word sacrament meeting, and I was talking to a group of people, and they looked at me and had no idea what I was talking about. And then I realized that's right, everyone else calls it communion, and we call it sacrament. So just things like that where we have differences in our vocabulary, but really when you put all that aside, we have so much in common. We just call it different things, or we talk about it differently, but really we have so much in common, and we do a lot of the same things. So that was an eye-opener and something I needed to experience. So I'm going to try to do better with that in that area. So one last thing I wrote, let's see. Oh yeah, when I came back and I opened up about a lot of these experiences with friends and people that I know, I've had people say to me, well, that's really neat what you experienced and really neat what different people do from different churches, but how can those things be right if we don't do those things? So if they're right, wouldn't we be doing those things too in our church? Or, you know, why are there these differences? And it's an interesting conversation to have, but I was able to use that as a teaching opportunity to share with people that it's all good, and it's all good. A lot of it is so good, and really when you look at it, the way I look at it is I've got something good, let me add more to it. If there's more I can add to the good that I have, then why not? So that's the approach that I take, that I can always add more good to what I've got. and everybody has something good to offer. Everybody is valuable to the Lord's kingdom, and we all have so much we can learn from each other if we would just stop for a moment and set our fears aside, put down those barriers, and just open up and listen and have these conversations. We would find that we have so much more in common than we do our differences. And just because things are different, they're said differently, worded differently, or done differently, doesn't make them wrong or bad. A lot of the times what I've learned is that we're all talking about the same thing. We're just going about it a little bit differently. So that was pretty neat. And that was just something I took away. So, all right, so I just want to say, let's move on real quick. So I'm going to share a couple more things later on about my trip, but I'm going to move on to the heart of the message. And before we do that, I just, of course, have to share with you my numbers. These are pretty cool. This is pretty awesome what's been showing up for me. And I did skip over some. So I was going to show you here, when we were in Lynn's car later that day, he said something, and right then we all looked at the time, and I noticed it was 3:11, so I took a picture. It had to do with exactly what we were talking about, and that third day power in the 11th hour was pretty awesome. And then when we were at the visitor center, and we were downstairs, when I told you we were having that tour in Independence, and we were downstairs getting a tour from the sister missionaries, and they shared something, and then Lynn said, "Oh, we better keep an eye on the time. What time is it?" And I looked at the clock, and it was 1:13. And he laughed so hard when I showed that to him. And again, I said, "See, you're going to see these numbers all the time when you're around me." And then we went into a part of the museum where they had a display of all the Book of Mormons from all over the world, every language that they've been translated into. And the sister missionary said, "Guess how many languages right now that we have this book translated into?" And we said, "What?" And she said, 111. 111. And so I said to Lynn, "That's the other number that I see. I see 111, and it just has to do with unity. It all has to do with unity." And so in that moment, I saw that message about unity with those Book of Mormons being translated into just about every language in the world. Well, at least 101 languages. There's a message of unity in that. And us, no matter how different we are, how different our cultures are, our backgrounds, our languages, we can still come together and be one in the Lord. So I love that. All right, so just some more things I wanted to show you that week. This was on March 11th, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So on March 11th, I saw 113 and 311 all day long, you guys. It was incredible. So, and then I want to share this with you. This was pretty awesome. Crystal, if you're watching. Oh, my son is teaching drum lessons right below me, so if you hear drums playing, that's why. But right below me, oh, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. So Crystal shared with me this picture. She shared it on our Facebook group, and this was pretty awesome. I'm just going to read to you real quick what she said. She said, "A sister who taught Relief Society in our ward last Sunday shared this photo with an amazing story behind it. She said that her brother uploaded this photo on January 3rd, and he was working on the Oklahoma City Temple renovation until the project finished about a week ago. This renovation changed her brother's life. He has been a drug addict, and she said a lost cause since he was a teenager. He has been estranged from their family and the church for years. I thought it was so incredible how he is now coming back, and the 111 seemed very appropriate in his returning and becoming whole again." And I've talked about before, when you see 4 ones, it represents you and the Godhead. So becoming one with the Godhead, becoming one in heart, mind, and purpose. And she says, "The 100% charged spoke to me as well, as he is fist bumping the angel Moroni in this picture." He's fist bumping the angel Moroni. She said, "It is a miracle." So I absolutely love that. In fact, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit so you can see even better. There we go. That's the fist bump, and that's the angel Moroni on the temple. So I thought that was pretty awesome, you guys. I just had to share that. And so this was let's see. Oh, I have a couple pictures that didn't turn out, so I'm not going to show those, but I'll tell you about it. I'll just tell you about it since it didn't show up. So that whole week I was seeing these numbers everywhere, and how it would work is I would see them all about an hour apart. So it's like the Lord would get my attention and He'd show me a number, and then a thought would come into my head and I'd ponder on that thought, and then just bam, 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 I would see it everywhere within just an hour's time. And so I took so many pictures, but I don't have them all on here. The one I thought I had that didn't turn out is a picture. We were looking for a restaurant. It was on Main Street here where I live, and I Googled it. I noticed that it had closed, so I Googled it, and it came up, and it showed that this restaurant showed up, and it showed that it had 113 reviews. And then it showed that it's normally opened from 11 to 3 p.m. or something like that. And then, anyways, all over this screenshot on my phone, it was 113, 113, 113. So there it was again. Right after I took a screenshot on my phone, and then we got back driving again, and we were headed back down Main Street. All of a sudden, I see this right in front of me, license plate 113, and I was having a conversation with my kids about this number and how I've been seeing it all day, and I just saw it on my phone when we were looking for this restaurant. Now here it is on the license plate in front of me because I'm talking about it, and it's just funny how that happens. I just have to laugh every single time. So that was all within a day. And then I started seeing this number, you guys. So then I start seeing the number 144, which is a number I talk about a lot. To me, it means the 144,000. And so everywhere I go, all within a day, I'm seeing this number everywhere. So I might talk about this guy a little bit later. His name's Henry Gruver. But I looked up his video so I could share it, and there it was, 144. And then, let's see, let me show you another one. So then I find some more about Henry Gruver, another video about Henry Gruver, and there it is everywhere, 144, 111, 44, all over the page. And I'm thinking, maybe somehow Henry Gruver is going to be part of the 144,000, or the kind of work that he's doing and the message that he is sharing very much aligns with the work of what the 144,000 will be doing. So either way, I couldn't help but not notice that attached to Henry Gruver and everything else I saw the rest of that day, you guys. So just a couple more. These are just a little bit out of order. So also the same day I was seeing the 113 and the 311. Here it is again, just on an ad on my phone. And so the word stood out to me, work out. It's working out. The work that we do as 311 workers, it is work, but when you do it for the right reasons, it all works out. So that's the message I took away from that. And then my sister called me. And our phone call happened to be 1 hour and 44 minutes long. And I noticed that right when we hung up. And we were talking about this message. So again, how awesome is that? It's just crazy how this happens. It's just, you just can't make this up. Then later that same day, I bought tickets. We went to go see a high school production at the high school. And I was trying to look up their Facebook page to answer or get a question answered about something. And there it was, 144. And in this post, I actually wrote a post, and oh, that's right, I was tagging them. I wrote an Instagram post, and I was talking about how the girl in the play is so talented. She's in our stake, and she's such an incredible young lady that she has a really bright future. And that's what I was saying in this post. And then right when I was tagging LHS Productions, I saw the 144 and thought, well, I won't be surprised if she's somehow connected to the 144. She's an incredible youth with an incredible talent and gift for singing, and just an awesome family. She comes from an awesome family. So anyways, let me go back now. Okay. All right, you guys. So I just saw so much this week with that, and so there's definitely something about all this, about our youth right now, every time I talk about one of my children or an incredible youth in my ward or stake or one of my nephews or something, I'm seeing the number 144. So there's something awesome about that. I know I shared that in the last video message. Are you seeing it too? Okay, I'm going to transition from numbers now over to news, which we'll talk about a little bit of numbers just because it's tied into the news. I'm just going to talk about some events, and then, yeah, we'll try to end this pretty soon, guys. So some of you saw this. Some of you saw this in the news, and it was shared in our Facebook group. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up for you guys. Let's see, where is it? Okay, I thought I had it on here. It must have got deleted, so I'm not showing it on here. So I'm just gonna, you're not gonna see me for a moment. I'm just gonna step out of here real quick. Well, you can see me, I just can't see what you're seeing. Okay, if that makes sense. All right, I'm just gonna go back into Facebook real quick and pull that up because I wanted to share that with you guys. Here it is. There it is. Okay, so it's just an image, and it says there's solar storms happening right now, and it says over the past couple of days, energy has been highly charged and felt intense due to B and C class solar flares, and also a hole open on the surface of the sun causing solar storms that will continue until Friday, March 15th. The following are commonly noted during solar storms: unexplained anxiety, nervousness, restlessness, anger, arguments, impatience, irritability, sadness, fatigue, difficulty sleeping, vivid dreams or nightmares, weather extremes, sensing major changes coming, electrical, technology, communication, and GPS disturbance, enhanced intuition, sensitivity, alertness, insight and clarity, synchronicity, deja vu, and then I'm not even kidding, it says seeing the number sequences 333 and 11. So there it is again, the number 311. That was incredible. So someone shared that in our group, and we were just floored. Again, it's just something you can't make up. So I went on to read more about that, and I wrote some notes about it, and I wrote, let's see, oh no, sorry, somebody else shared this on that post, and I didn't get permission, so I'm not sharing names, but you know who you are. But she said something awesome. She said, I came across this today, and a few things caught my attention. I went and did some research, and I found that there were 2 solar flares, an eruption flare on a coronal hole flare, which took place on March 10th and 11th. These are the same days as the Rome temple dedication took place. Our prophet said of that historic dedication, quote, this is a hinge point in the history of the unprecedented future, unparalleled. We're just building up to what's ahead now. And she said the solar flares have created a high-speed solar wind stream that could arrive on our planet either late on March 13th or, March 15th or early on March 14th. This may explain social media sites being down yesterday. I also noticed at the bottom of the picture the number 333 and 111 are pointed out. As I read about the activity on the sun, I thought of the sun, capital S-O-N, and how exciting it is to be alive at this time to see his work accelerating. What are your thoughts? So everybody joined in that conversation and shared all kinds of awesome thoughts about that. And I love that because that was the news that week. Last week was March 11th, 311, and the dedication of the temple in Rome, and all of the 12 apostles were there, which was historic because that never happens. And all the amazing stories centered around that. There was so much in the news. I read so many articles about it and so much that happened that day. And President Nelson met the Pope and the conversation that they had together. In fact, I shared with Lynn. I'm just going to go out of here real quick. I want to share with you what I texted him right when I got home. And I saw that I texted him and I said, President Nelson just visited with Pope Francis, and I thought you would like what President Nelson said. Quote, "We found that we have much in common. The differences in doctrine are real, and they're important, but they're not nearly as important as the things we have in common. We can build bridges of friendship instead of building walls of segregation." And so Lynn responded, "Sounds like President Nelson is a member of our team." I just want to show you. I don't know if you can even see that. That was hilarious. So yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. And again, I love the message that President Nelson is sharing right now and he's taking to the entire world is let's start building these bridges of unity and coming together on the things that we have in common and building friendships. And it's just funny, the timing of that, President Nelson delivering that message in front of the whole world and taking that with him as he goes around the world. And that's the message that we're also delivering with our Believers Building Bridges tour. So again, you just can't make this up. You can't make up the timing of it all. It's just so in line with each other and so aligned with what the Lord is doing right now. And it's just been so many incredible witnesses daily. I mean, I can't even keep up with how many witnesses I'm receiving and how many pictures and screenshots I'm taking. It's almost just too much, you guys. It's just awesome. All right, so I'm going to move on from that. And a lot of people were saying, well, no wonders it was such a crazy week with all these solar flares and things happening in my life. It all makes sense, but it was a pretty monumental week. And it was a pretty awesome week for the Lord. And you know when the Lord is doing something awesome, Satan is working just as hard to counteract what it is that the Lord is doing. So you can always expect unexpected crazy things to happen when awesome things are happening all around. Okay, so yes, the prophet visited Rome on March 11th, and there's just so many other things that I'll probably share later when I have time in my next video message. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the message. Here's what I've been hearing, and this message formed out of everything I just shared with you, out of everything that happened in Missouri, everything that happened this week in the news. The more I pondered and wrote in my journal about everything that I've been experiencing and everything that's just sort of been going on around me, this is the message that formed, and I'm so excited to share this with you now, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please share. Okay, I wrote, let's see, here's some notes that I wrote. I wrote about having eyes to see and ears to hear, and I wrote, when you open up, like when you really open up, that's when you see. With everything outside of the box, as soon as I opened up to it rather than closed off and shut it down, that's when I would experience it. It would come into my life all day until I received my own witness of it and had an understanding of it. Some things we fear because we don't understand, and it's different, and so we resist it or reject it, or we simply just say, not now, or not for me. And so these were just my jumbled thoughts, but I got thinking about how whenever there's something different that I'm opening up to and I'm thinking, Lord, do you want to show me something about this? This is something new, this is something different, something unfamiliar to me, unfamiliar territory. Are you leading me to this for a reason? Is there something you want to teach me about this? When I approach it that way and I open up, then all of a sudden I start experiencing it, and He brings people and experiences and circumstances into my life that are all about that very thing. And I get to witness it personally and get my own testimony of it. And then it all makes sense. And I realize, okay, now I see, now I get it. But when I approach something with fear, you know, Lord, this is unfamiliar territory, so I'm going to stay away. I don't want to get near that. I'm not sure what that is, or I don't know. When I close off, I can't get those witnesses and I can't get that understanding of it. And so I just push it away and reject it. But there's so much more growth and so many more blessings when we open up and just trust the Lord and say, Lord, show me what it is you want to show me about this. Teach me what it is you want me to learn about this. And that's what I've been experiencing so much over the last couple of weeks. So I wrote in my notes how sometimes I get excited, and so I'll share some of these things. And I'll share especially experiences that I find on YouTube or on other people's websites, other people that I follow that belong to different churches and different faiths, I will be inspired by a story they share or an experience they had, and I think it's just awesome. And so I'll share it, and sometimes I'll get people, usually for the most part, I'll get people who love it just as much as I do and gain something from it. They benefit from it. They're blessed by it. But every now and then I'll get someone who isn't sure about it, and they'll say something like, "I'm confused. Why would you share that? Why would you share that? This person doesn't belong to the same faith as you, or they believe a different doctrine than you, so why would you even share that? I'm confused." And it's hard to explain to someone who's not open to that how you can sometimes learn, most often more than not learn from people who are different than you. And I have found that in every experience, in every story, and everything that is good from someone else who is different than me, there's always something I gain from that. There's always something incredibly valuable in that for me, and I learn from it and I grow from it. I don't just learn and grow and find value in people who are just like me and grew up the same way that I grew up and belong to the same church that I belong to. I find value in everyone, in all their different experiences and their differences. There's something in that I can take away and I can learn from. And that's how I've always been. And so I've just been hearing this message of how important it is to open up, not be afraid, set fears aside, and just open up and say, "Lord, show me. Lord, teach me. Lord, what is this?" And if it's good, He will show you more, and you'll have good experiences and good fruit coming from that. And if it's something that's not for you or not important or something that's maybe not even good, He'll quickly let you know as well. You'll quickly experience that. So that's just all part of trusting the Lord and trusting in that gift of discernment. So anyways, I had that in my thought, and now I want to share with you something I wrote in my journal. Let's see. Okay, you guys. This was on March 13th, and I'm just going to kind of jump ahead in my journal, and I was writing about everything that happened to me when I was in Missouri, and I was processing it all and how amazing it was and making sense of all these new things that I was processing. And so I wrote it all down. I wrote about my feelings and my thoughts, and I asked the Lord in a prayer, "What do you want me to learn about all of this? Are you happy with everything that we did that week? Are you happy with the experiences that we had? Are you pleased with the service that we gave? Is there more you want to talk to me or tell me about this? And what more do I need to know? What more can I share about this as I share my experiences with everyone around me? What would you have me say and know?" And as I did this, He started putting scriptures into my mind, and I had no idea what these scriptures were about, so I just went to each one, and I was just told, write down each scripture that I send you to, sum it up, write it down, and it's going to form the message that I have for you, which is awesome because it's so in line with everything I've been sharing in this video today. So He takes me to Doctrine and Covenants 137, verses 7 and 9, and here's what I wrote. "All who have died without a knowledge of this gospel, who would have received it if they hadn't died, shall be heirs of the celestial kingdom of God. I, the Lord, will judge all men according to their works, according to the desire of their hearts." So He's saying right here, it's all about the heart. It doesn't matter how awesome your works are if there's nothing in your heart, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So if somebody's doing something and you don't understand their works don't make sense to you, it's foreign to you, it's strange to you, it's unfamiliar territory, that doesn't matter to the Lord because the Lord is looking at their hearts. And what's in their heart is telling Him all about their works. And that's what He's judging them by, is what's motivating those works, what's in their hearts. And so there's just so much to be learned from this. And so I wrote, in other words, God judges the strange things that we do and say, the different ways that we worship, by the desires of our heart. It's our desires that are pleasing to Him. And I was reminded of, He reminded me, put into my mind that night we were all together singing and praising and worshiping. We all did it in our different ways, and it was all beautiful to Him. And someone, an outsider that's not used to that, might come into that room and think, what in the world is going on in here? This is craziness. There's so much going on in here. What is this, right? And they might choose to not be a part of that, or walk out and leave the room. But we felt such love, and it didn't matter how different we were and how differently we prayed. We all were united with our hearts, and that's what the Lord's talking about right here. He's not judging how different we all pray and how it looks, and how some people are more physical with their prayer and others are more still. He's judging what's going on in our hearts, and that's what He's looking at. So then He took me to Doctrine and Covenants, section 138, verse 35, and I wrote, redemption is ours because of the sacrifice of the cross. And He reminded me, it's all about, it's the message that I want everyone to know is what happened on the cross, what I did for everyone, what happened in the garden with the atonement, everything that I did. That's what's most important. And if you can all unite on that, then I can work with that. We can do something awesome here. So when we all have a love for Jesus Christ and a testimony of what He did, and we can definitely unite on that. So then He took me to Alma 31, verse 18, and I wrote, it was talking about the Zoramites. The Zoramites are a boastful and prideful people. And I wrote, could much of the body of Christ, and this could be in any church, but the majority of the members of the church, of the churches, could they parallel this? And in verse 18 it says, this is what they're praying. We thank Thee, O God, that we are a chosen and holy people. And they cry unto Thee with their mouths while they are puffed up even unto the greatness with the vain things of the world. And so what I got out of that, He was showing me that because He's saying how many people believe that they are in the right and that they have a relationship with me because they're saying all the right things and they're doing all the right things, and they're letting everyone know I do and say all the right things, but their hearts are far from me. And a lot of times these people, they come in all different shapes and sizes and every color, and from every church. They're in every church, you guys. But these people uplift themselves above everyone else and think, well, I am better than everyone else because of what I believe and what I know and what I've experienced. God has really blessed me, and I am a chosen people, or we are a chosen people, or we are the chosen people, right? And there's a pride that comes with that actually separates you from the Spirit and from having a relationship with the Lord. And so He was just kind of opening my eyes and saying, this is happening everywhere. There's people who won't open up to building bridges with other churches because they think that they're the better people, they're the chosen people, they're the holier people, they're the more blessed people. So why give anyone else the time of day? There's no value in that. And how dangerous that is, and how wrong that is. So He was showing this to me, and then He took me to verse 36, and it says, Alma clapped his hands on his friends, and they were filled with the Holy Spirit. So in that verse, it says that Alma clapped his hands upon his fellow missionaries, those who were with him. He clapped his hands on them, and instantly they were filled with the Holy Spirit. And I thought, if we saw something like that today, we might think that is strange, right? And this is Alma. This is a prophet. And so, again, the Lord was showing me, you can't put limits on me. And, the way that I work with my children, it's different with everyone. It's not going to be the same. What I do with you is not the same I'm going to do with your neighbor. And the plans that I have for you are not the same plans that I have for your neighbor. And I'm doing an awesome work, a mighty work among my people. And whoever is willing, I'm going to use them. And you all are different. You all have different spiritual gifts and different strengths and talents that you bring to the table, and different groups of people that you can reach better than others. And so you better believe I have a purpose for all of you, and I'm going to use you if you're willing. And it might look like this. It might look like something strange, but it doesn't mean that the Spirit isn't involved. And it doesn't mean that I'm not a part of it and I'm not behind it. So this is what He was showing me. And I know this. I've always believed this, but I felt that this is something I'm supposed to share in this video message, that someone out there needs to hear this. Okay, so Alma chapter 32 verse 10, it says, I wrote, you can worship in more places than just your churches and meeting houses, and more than just on Sunday. So in that verse, he's telling the people, don't be so down and out. I know they're not letting you in, the Zoramites are not letting you into their churches to worship, but church doesn't just have to be in a meeting house, and it doesn't just have to be on Sundays. Church can be wherever you want to take it, whatever day of the week you want to have it. And we're kind of learning that concept right now with home church. And that's exactly what I experienced this weekend, and I wrote that in my journal, and then the Lord confirmed it with the scripture that yes, church shouldn't just be once a week and just in a meeting house. You can feel the Spirit and have these conversations, and you can worship me any time of day, any place, anywhere, whenever you want. And that's how it should be. Okay, then he took me to Alma. Let's see, I wrote, still in Alma 32, faith does not mean that you have a perfect knowledge of things. You simply hope that things you have not seen with your own eyes are true. So again, he was showing me as part of this message, just because something doesn't make sense doesn't mean it's not true. And that's where faith comes in, that we hope something is true. We have a hope, and just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean that it's not right. So we just trust in that hope that this is something that feels good, the Spirit's leading you to it, it has the positive fruits, and you pray about it, you get your own witness. This is what Alma's teaching us in this chapter. And so in verse 22, he says, I wrote, God is merciful unto every person who believes on his name and the power behind his name. In other words, if we call on his name and we believe it's actually his power, he will show us mercy. He desires that we believe on his word. So I absolutely love that. He's merciful unto everyone who believes in his name. He will show mercy, he will show healing, he will show miracles. We just have to believe on his name and the power behind that name. And 23, verse 23, he imparts his word unto men and women and children through his angels. Little children are given words that confound the wise and the learned. Children and women speak revelation. And so he was just saying, I use all my people. I'm not a respecter of persons. I'm no respecter of persons. If you're willing, I will use you. I will use my sons. I will use my daughters. I will use their children, little children, to do my work and to give my word and to speak my voice and give that revelation. Okay, in verse 26, he says, I wrote, you can't know of a perfect surety of my words any more than by having faith means you somehow have a perfect knowledge. So I just highly recommend you go back and read that and ponder on that yourself. And then verse 27, but if you will experiment upon my words and exercise a particle of faith, even if all you can do is believe a tiny bit, let this desire to believe work inside of you until you have enough belief that you can accept a portion of my words. And he teaches in this chapter that this is an experiment that we should try. When you hear something and it sounds good and it feels good, here's how you can test it out and experiment with it if it actually is good. And he teaches us how to do that. So he says, even if it's just a tiny bit of faith that you have, just enough that you want to believe that it's true, let that desire work inside of you and build until you experience that truth. Okay, verse 28, he says, if you don't cast out your unbelief, which is a spirit, the spirit of unbelief, if you don't cast out that spirit of doubt, that spirit of unbelief, you will resist the Spirit of the Lord. As you open up, you feel a good feeling swell inside of you, and you'll say, this must be a good thing. The seed is good. The word is good because it's enlarging my soul, enlightening my understanding, and becoming delicious to me. And then in verse 29, behold, would this not increase your faith, even though you don't have a perfect knowledge? And in verse 32, if the seed swells and grows, it's a good seed. Otherwise, it would die. Your mind will begin to expand in verse 34. And then in 35, because it is light, and whatsoever is light is good. So all light is good. And then it says light is discernible. You can discern the light from the darkness. And it reminded me of what Pastor Billy said when he looked into my eyes and he said, I see it in her. She has it. He saw that light and he knew that I had a relationship with my Savior. And that's because it's visible, it's discernible from the darkness. I wrote, it said in there, after you taste this light, your knowledge is then perfect. So you have to experience it. And how do you taste something? You have to actually open up your mouth. You have to open up. Keywords, open up. You have to be open. So verse 38, if you don't continue to nourish the tree, it will die and you will cast it out. How do we nourish our testimonies? We share them. We share them, you guys. So after this, I wrote about how someone reached out to me, someone called me, and it forced me to share my testimony. Someone called and asked about my experience that weekend and had some questions for me, and it put me in a position to where I was again, sorry, my kids are being rowdy. It put me in a position to share my testimony about all of this and to grow those seeds that I planted over the weekend in Missouri. Because I was talking about it and sharing it with this person, I could feel it growing in me again and getting larger and larger and brighter, and it really felt like a tree was growing inside of me. And that's because I was sharing it. Had I just come home and forgotten about it and gotten back into the swing of life and back into the busyness of everything and not taken the time to ponder it, write about it, share it, I'm sure it would have shriveled up and eventually died inside of me. It would have disappeared. So lastly, in verse 40, I wrote, if you don't nourish the word, looking forward and ahead with an eye of faith to the fruit, which is the manifestations, you will never be able to pick the fruit from the tree of life. And then in verse 42, he says, if you do this, you will never again thirst or hunger. So he says, try this experiment and then put it into practice all the time. You're never going to be hungry or thirsty again. You will just be filled all the time. Lastly, he said in verse 43, you will reap the rewards of your faith. I'm sorry. Honey, give me just a few more minutes, okay? So he said, you will reap the rewards of your faith. And I wrote, I had prayed also about doubters, about those that I had shared some of these awesome experiences with who doubted it, who doubted some of these experiences and weren't sure about it, weren't sure if it was a good thing I was sharing with them. And because it didn't fit in their paradigm, it didn't fit with what they're used to. It was different. And so this was the answer. So I was writing in my journal and sharing with my sister and pondering about all of this, about how I grew and I learned so much that weekend in Missouri, but as I shared these experiences, some people loved it and some people didn't. And the people that didn't, the doubters that had that spirit of unbelief, were kind of working against my testimony. But when I prayed about it to the Lord, He sent me to Alma. He sent me to chapter 32. He sent me to all these verses, and He showed me, Alma 31 and 32. And He showed me all of this and said, you don't need to doubt, you don't need to fear. This is how you can test your testimony. This is how you can test out the word that you received, everything that you were given, everything that felt so good. This is how you can test it out and know that it's of me and know that it's a good thing. And it was just another witness to what I already knew. So I wanted to share that with you guys. Lastly, I wrote, okay, real quick, I'll just share that I talked a lot about Henry Gruver earlier, and I showed those pictures of how the number 144 was just all over, attached to his name everywhere. And how interesting that was, because I wrote in my journal how I had shared some experiences with someone. I'm not gonna say names or anything like that, and I just have to share this because it fits so well with my message. So I'm grateful this happened because it's so needed to be said. It has to do with this message 100%. But I shared some awesome experiences. We were talking about the temple in Rome because it was the topic of conversation everywhere I went. We talked about this everywhere with so many people. It was always brought up because it's such an awesome story, but it was all about that temple dedication in Rome and how so many neat experiences keep happening in the city of Rome lately. And so many people have had some incredible witnesses with that, and we've been talking about this in so many groups and everywhere I go. And I had shared how there's a man by the name of Henry Gruver. I'll put some links down below. And years ago, I had come across some of his videos where he shares a story about an experience he had under the streets of Rome, and how, I'm sorry you guys, I got drums underneath me and kids screaming behind me. But he had some incredible, profound experiences with Rome and was shown some of the strongholds that the adversary has over that city and has for hundreds and hundreds of years. And in fact, when I was looking into this, I learned that there's actually a whole group of people out there who believe that the headquarters of hell are actually under the city of Rome, that that's where the throne of Satan is. It's under the streets of Rome, and that's where he has a stronghold. And it's interesting because at the same time, that's the capital of Christianity for the entire world, and how there's always that contrast. There's always, wherever you have the Lord doing something, you're going to have the adversary doing something in that same area and working just as hard. And so that was seen with the opposition that was experienced when they were building the Rome temple. There was so much opposition working against them. And so we were talking about maybe there's something to this. So I shared a video of Henry's experience, and a lot of people, I've shared this before, I've shared it in past videos, and people usually really love that story and really feel the spirit of what he's sharing. And there were some people this time who didn't feel that and thought, well, who is this man? I've never heard of him. You know, he doesn't have the priesthood. He's not a member of our church. So how could these experiences be real and legit? And I don't know about that. I don't know if I want to believe that or accept that. And anyways, it was just interesting. And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to share part of this message that I've been feeling. So I'm going to read to you what I wrote, what the Spirit put into my mind to say about this, because people were asking me, why would you share this? You know, I'm confused. This man doesn't have the priesthood. How could this experience be real or true? And so here's what I had written. I had written, let's see. Oh, I wrote how it was interesting that this experience that happened to Henry under the streets of Rome happened in October of 1988. And he said when this experience happened, he learned what the Spirit told him was that the strike on the church in Rome was broken, that he had witnessed it breaking, that stronghold that Satan had over that area was being broken. And exactly 20 years later, in October of 2008, was when the church announced the building of the Rome temple. So I thought that was pretty awesome, so I shared that. And so we were having this conversation, and people were asking me questions about it. So I wrote, I believe that the Lord is using more than just members of our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to bring about his purposes on the earth today. We're such a tiny speck on the globe in comparison to all the people on the earth. And in order to get things done quickly, he's going to use whoever is willing. I can't explain it or make sense of it, but I just know that the Lord works in mysterious ways and he's not limited. And it reminds me of Mark chapter 9. And I'll just read this real quickly, and starting in verse 38. And John answered unto him, saying, Master, we saw one casting out devils in thy name, and he followeth not us. And we forbade him, because he followeth not us. But Jesus said, Forbid him not, for there is no man which shall do a miracle in my name that can lightly speak evil of me. For he that is not against us is on our part. Or in other words, we saw someone, Master, who has not been baptized into our church and does not have proper authority or the priesthood, and he is casting out devils in your name. And Jesus says, well, do not stop him. Anyone who performs miracles in my name believes in me. He is helping our cause. He is one of us. So I love that. And I wrote, I've always taken this to mean that Jesus is the authority, and anyone who believes in him and calls on his name will be a weapon to darkness. I believe that the enemy sees the faith of that believer and knows that what he or she says will happen because of their faith in him. Nothing terrifies the enemy more than a believer who has faith in what Jesus can do. After watching the full interview, I found it interesting that Henry said he was humbled by what he said because in that experience, he said some things, and he was humbled by what he said because he does not believe that he has any mantle of authority to say such things. And he didn't understand why these words even came out of his mouth. He recognized the unorthodoxy of it all. And since they weren't his own words, whoever was speaking through him must have had that authority. I am so sorry, you guys. I wrote, I know a lot of people who are not members of our church, but who have had personal visitations with the Lord, who have been able to heal in his name, cast out devils, perform miracles. This is the work that he has asked them to do. It doesn't always fit with our paradigm, and it might just be that there are some things we aren't meant to understand at this time. I don't know or have all the answers, but I believe that Henry's experience was real and genuine, and I felt a powerful witness of that. All right, so I just felt that I was to share that in this video message because it seems to happen all the time where it doesn't matter what church you belong to, when you are brought up a certain way and you believe a certain way, and you come across someone else who has a different doctrine than you and believes differently, but they're having incredible experiences with the Lord as well, you kind of wonder about that. And I'm not saying this is something that I do. I have done this in the past before, but I've met other people belonging to other faiths who have experienced this as well. So we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat. We're all guilty of this. But the Lord just kept telling me it's time to stop doing this. It's time to stop putting each other down just because we don't have the same doctrines. The Lord is using all of us. He has a purpose for all of us. He loves all of us. He is using all of us. And we need to come together and unite in him. All right, you guys. Hold on one second. Okay, we'll see if some of the craziness will calm down now. Okay, you guys, so as I was thinking about all of this, I was driving in the car. This was the day after I came home, and it was all fresh on my mind, and I was just enjoying every minute of it as I revisited the weekend in my mind. And I turned on the radio, and as I said before, for some reason the Lord always uses Joel Osteen to get a message to me. And I was flipping through the channels, and all of a sudden I see sermon number 385 titled Embracing Change. And Joel says this. He's saying this in that moment. And so I just felt stop and listen. He says, it's important to embrace being challenged and feeling uncomfortable. Yes. Okay, so he gave an experience of how you can go to different churches and they're all worshiping the same person. They're all worshiping the Lord, but they're all doing it a little bit differently. But that doesn't make it wrong. And so he says, yes, organs are wonderful in churches, but so are guitars. And the old traditional hymns are wonderful, but so are the new songs that are being written. Theologians and scholars are great to help teach doctrine, but we also need people who can make it relatable to our modern day lives. Don't get stuck in traditions. God is doing something new right now, and he can't do something new if we are stuck in something old. I'm going to repeat that. God is doing something new right now, and he can't do something new if we are stuck in something old. And I talked about, I wrote down in my notes, St. Patrick's Day came, and I shared on Facebook a movie that we found on YouTube about St. Patrick and how I thought it would be neat for the kids to learn about him. And we watched this movie that was about his life and his story, and I'll have a link to that down below if you want to check it out. And yes, St. Patrick was Catholic. He was a Catholic. But however, so was Martin Luther, and then he left and formed the Lutheran Church. But my point is we all again, we all worship the same Lord, but we have different backgrounds, and we belong to these different churches, but the Lord is still using us. I believe that he used St. Patrick to do a work that he needed to do at that time that only St. Patrick could do. And he used Martin Luther at that time to do a work that only Martin Luther could do. And it's just interesting that we come from these different backgrounds, but the Lord is still using us all, and we're all valuable to him. And just because we're different doesn't make any one of us wrong. Or I hope you get what it is I'm trying to say. So as I was pondering on this, I heard a voice say in my mind, what if everyone is right? And I know this is going to sound crazy, so let me explain. But I heard, what if everyone is right? And it reminds me of the Big Bang Theory. As a child, when I learned in school about the Big Bang Theory, and our teacher taught us, you're either a creationist or you believe in this theory. You either believe that God created everything, or you either believe that everything started with the Big Bang. And I remember thinking, well, why can't they both be right? Maybe God used a Big Bang, he banged something together, and from that, he created our universe. But he existed prior to that, but to create our universe, he did it with a bang, and he banged things together, and that's how he did it. So what if we're both right? And I remember saying that, and the teacher being like, no, it can't both be right, it's one or the other. But I found that with so many other arguments in life, well, what if there's truth to both of these? What if they're both right? And maybe they're both wrong about some things, but maybe they're both right about some things. And so that's what I was reminded of. And I wrote down in my notes how when I went to Missouri, I remember before going there, I said to the Lord, I just want to dip my toe in the water. I just want to kind of dip my toe in and kind of observe what this is all going to be about, and get a feel for it so that next time I go, I'll have a better understanding and I'll be able to be used how you want to use me. But I remember thinking I had a little bit of uncertainty because I hadn't been to this yet and I didn't quite know what it would be like. I only had an idea in my mind. But I said to the Lord, let me just go and dip my toe in. And then next time you can use me a little deeper. But the Lord had something different in mind for me, and when I got there, he pushed me into the water, and I went all the way under, and he didn't give me a life jacket. And that's what he did to me. He just pushed me right in the water, and he said, you're getting wet. Whether you like it or not, you're getting wet. And that's exactly what happened. I was immersed into the work. I was immersed into that service. And I wrote in my notes, I just talked about how good that was for me, how I'm actually grateful looking back on it that the Lord just pushed me in and didn't cater to what I wanted, didn't just let me dip my toe in. He just threw me in because I grew so much over the weekend, and I learned so much that I wouldn't have learned had he not done that. And so, real quick, I'm running short on time. Real quick, I'm just going to say, I shared an experience on Facebook how I took my kids to Temple Square last week. They were out of school, and we went to Temple Square and had a beautiful experience, and we toured everywhere, and we spent the whole day there. And we came across this homeless person. More than once, we came across lots of homeless people, but this one man in particular we came across, and my little boy Tatum, who's 4, my kids had all brought their allowance with them that day because they wanted to, buy souvenirs and things, and we went out to a bakery, and so they brought their money, and we came across a homeless man, and he looked down at my son, and he said, little boy, do you have some money for me? Could you spare some money? And I thought that was interesting that he would ask the youngest person in our group. And he said, yeah, I have some money. Mom, can I have my money? So I opened up my purse and I hand him a bag of his allowance, and he hands the homeless man $1. And the homeless man was hooked up to an oxygen tank, and he was struggling to breathe. He was overweight, and he just looked like life was a struggle for him. And so he said, thank you so much for that $1. And then he said, could you spare another $1? He saw that my son had more money, and I started to think, well, that's all he has. He's not going to have any more money after this. But my son said, sure, I'll give you another $1. So we handed him $1, and then we walked on our way, and he said, bless you, young man, bless you. And I remember thinking, well, that was interesting. And as we walked away, my daughter said, Mom, because Tatum gave that homeless man $2, I think we're going to get 2 blessings today. We're going to get a blessing for each $1 that Tatum gave him. So be on the lookout for 2 blessings. And I thought that was really sweet and awesome that she would think to say that as well. Well, later on throughout the day, as we're walking through Temple Square, I mean, we had just passed this man. We hadn't even gone 5 minutes, and all of a sudden, he's in front of us. This is where it gets interesting. My kids see him in front of us. They're like, Mom, there's the man with the oxygen tank. How in the world did he get in front of us? He was behind us. There's no way he could have got in front of us. And so they went to turn the corner because he turned a corner, and they turned the corner, and I went with them, and he was gone. He was nowhere to be found. There was nowhere for him to go. He was gone. This happened a couple more times. They saw him ahead of us, and as we went to go try to find where he went, he was gone. And my daughter said, Mom, I think he was an angel. And she said, Mom, you know how there's missionaries here at Temple Square, and they get called to the Temple Square mission? She said, I believe that there's angels that get called to the Temple Square mission. That's their assignment. They're assigned to Temple Square. And she says, I feel like they're everywhere here, and I feel like he was one of them. Well, we went to the conference center, and right in front of the conference center was a homeless woman, and she asked my son, again, she asked us for some change. And I have a debit card, that's all I have, but my kids had change, and so he opened up his change, and he gave her the whole bag. He said, I want you to have everything, and I said, I want you to know that's his allowance that he's giving you. So he's really giving you everything he has, and he's excited to do that. And she was so touched by that, and she teared up, and she said, bless you, little boy, bless you. Who talks that way, right? I mean, it just was just like what the other man had just said. We go into the conference center, we come back, and I'm on the phone with my son, my other son, and we're crossing the street, and she kind of tugs at us and gets our attention, and I look down, and she goes like this, do you have any food? And then I look down, and I realize we have our whole bag of leftovers from the Lionhouse pantry where we had dinner, and I thought, yeah, we do have food, I guess we could give this to her. So I said to my kids, these are your leftovers, not mine. You know, Tatum, this is your pizza. Cambry, these are your potatoes and your rolls. You wanted to have this for dinner tonight, so it's up to you. Do you want to give this to the homeless woman? And they didn't even hesitate. They said, yes. So I was so happy for them. They ran over their food to her, and she just opens it up and says, oh my goodness, yum. And she just starts shoving all this food in her mouth. She's just chowing down on the potatoes, and she has tears running down her face. And it was just interesting how in that moment, all these people were walking past, coming to and from the temple in their temple clothes, in their business, their church suits and their dresses and dressed, you know, to go into the temple. And they're just coming and going, coming and going. And here's me and my family in our street clothes and our jeans with holes in them. And we're sitting on the cement ministering to homeless people. We're having conversations with them. We're loving them. We're saying, tell us your story. We're asking them questions. We're validating them as a person and loving them. And here's these people walking past them in a hurry, completely ignoring them, probably thinking these people are always here. They're always panhandling. And, you know, there's other places they could go to get help. Not today. I'm not going to help them. And here's this woman who was starving and no one would feed her. And I don't know her story. I don't know if she has mental illness or anything like that, but she clearly was starving, you guys, and she ate all of that food. And so I said to her, when was the last meal that you ate? When was the last time you ate? She says, I haven't eaten since yesterday. It's been 24 hours since I've had anything you could call a meal. She said, thank you so much. I needed this. And she just had tears running down her face. And I thought, man, the people that we helped today really were grateful. It felt real. And so my daughter said, Mom, I think she was an angel too. She's assigned to Temple Square. So we get home. We pull in the driveway, come in the house. We get a knock on the door. And this man from our stake shows up. And here's our 2 blessings. He hands us 2 names he had found in the temple of our ancestors. He was going through the stake drawer, pulled out 2 names, and they happened to be 2 of my ancestors. And he comes to my home and says, we just did the work. I wanted to give this to you. And I thought, that's awesome. That came from the wise words of a child, from my daughter, who knew that was going to happen today. So I just had to share that story with you guys. So it's been an awesome week, and the Lord's really been blessing us and really showing us His goodness. And I'm going to end with a story someone shared on Facebook. And the post was titled something like, have miracles ceased? And this man shares a story about his son who was sick, and he needed an emergency surgery. I think he had a growth on his brain. He had a tumor, and it wasn't looking good. They were really worried. He had to have surgery right away. And he goes into the hospital with his wife, and they're just thrown into this trial, and they're desperate for answers. They're desperate for a miracle, and they're praying, and the bishop comes and prays with them, and family comes and prays with them, and they send out a prayer chain. Missionaries are praying for them. Everyone's praying for them. And they still can't find peace and solace and comfort. They're still desperate for something, and they're still worried, and they're still anxious. And so he's sharing this story, and then all of a sudden I'm going to read to you what he says. He says, "Suddenly in the hospital, a man appeared seemingly out of nowhere. He had a Jamaican accent, and he came right over to the chair and said, 'Are you praying?' And I answered him, and I said, 'Yes, we are. Our son currently is in surgery, and we are praying for him.' He then looked at me and said, 'Do you mind if I pray with you?' I paused, replaying the words to make sure I had heard him correctly. And then I said, 'Absolutely. The more prayers never hurt.' He knelt down, he looked me in the eyes, and he said with that awesome accent, 'Do you believe that Jesus Christ can heal your son?' Without a second to think, I said, 'Yes, I do.' What happened next is hard to describe. This man delivered one of the most powerful prayers I have ever heard. He said something to the effect of, 'Dear Lord, our Heavenly Father, we pray unto you by the power of Jesus Christ our Lord. We pray for this family and this boy. We know that you have the power to raise the dead, to make the blind see again, and that you have the power to keep this boy alive tonight. Let us speak of life, Lord. Let us speak of life. Let us speak of life. You who said to Ezekiel in the valley of dry bones, 'Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live, and ye shall live, and ye shall know that I am God.' Let no darkness come over this family, but let them be filled with light, knowing that you have preserved and protected them. That this moment will be a moment of conversion to Christ, and a moment to convert others to Christ. They will speak of this moment to many, and others will be drawn to thy light, that thy light will fill them and lift them up. Let us not speak of darkness, but let us speak of life. Let this family know to not blame themselves. Let us not speak of blame. Let this father and mother know that they are in thy hands. We seek thee. We love thee. We put ourselves and this boy in thy hands. Let us speak of life. Amen." As this man spoke, the Spirit filled me. I was overcome. I knew I was in the presence of angelic ministering. It was the first time all night that I felt any peace at all. I felt a strong impression that their son's name is Will, that Will would be taken care of, and that the Lord was mindful of him, and that our prayers were being answered. Every line of this prayer spoke to me. We had not told this man how serious the surgery was, how it was life or death, how death was a gripping fear that had overcome me, as were the feelings of guilt and blame for not having acted sooner. I had not shared any of that. I had not previously prayed vocally, so he could not have known the inner workings of my head. I stood and I embraced him for a long time, crying into his broad shoulders. He repeated over and over again, "Let us speak life tonight, brother. Let us speak of life." After his hug, we thanked him and walked back to sit with Bishop Doing and Karis. I looked over and saw this man put on his coat. He walked to the elevators and disappeared. We did ask him his name, and he told us it was Clinton. He had a purple shirt on, and I called the hospital the next day to see if I could locate him to thank him for the comfort he brought me. The operator could not help me find him by name. I asked if purple was the designation for a religious staff or a clergy, or more information on who sent him to comfort us. But the operator said, "I am not sure, honey, but purple in this hospital designates the housekeeping staff." After Clinton left, I felt somewhat calmer, but continued to pace. I kept thinking that what we needed was to see a nurse. If we saw the doctor, I was worried it would be a very bad sign. So I finally knew that I needed to get a blessing for Dana and me. I asked the bishop if he would give it. The bishop gave Dana a blessing that she would be comforted and feel peace. After that blessing, Before I could sit down, we looked up through the double doors, and through the window we saw a stout nurse hurrying out to the lobby. She was nearly breathless, but she said, "Your son is okay." So their story has a happy ending, and I loved it because it involved an angel. And what I loved about this angel, whoever he was, right, was that he was someone that was different. He was someone that was different, and for all they knew at the time, he belonged to a different church. He prayed a little bit differently than they do, and he had so much faith, but they embraced him and allowed him to come pray for them and ended up receiving a miracle and got the news that they wanted to hear. And so the Lord showed me this story, I feel like, and inspired me, prompted me to share it in this video message because it sums up everything that I shared today. That this is a great message of how when we open up and extend ourselves out to our different brothers and sisters of all different backgrounds, from all different churches, and we just open up to them and embrace them and love them and listen to their stories and their journeys and take what value they have to offer and apply it in our lives and allow them to bless us, then we will be blessed. And we just need to put down all of our walls and all of our doubts and everything that separates us. And just put all of that aside and just open up and embrace. And that's the message for this week. And so I'm going to end it by saying that to sum this all up, as I've reflected on everything and my role in all of this and how the Lord is using me, I feel like He's using me to be a paradigm shifter. And that's the word that came into my mind, those two words. Paradigm shifter. I am to help shift paradigms and help people open up to the new that He is trying to do. And in order to step into that new, we have to step away from the old and some of the old traditions and some of the things that just aren't a part of what He's doing right now. And when we open up and when we embrace all that is good, He can bless us and He can show us miracles and He can really amaze us and show us His goodness. And we will be blessed, and in turn, we will be able to bless others. So sorry this video went so long. I mean, by the time of day, by the way the sun is in the sky, you can tell it's been a long video. But thank you so much for joining me today, you guys. I know sometimes I can be long-winded, but I just really wanted to share that with you. I'm going to quickly look at the messages for those of you who actually hung around this long. I'm supposed to actually be at my kids' dance lessons right now. Oh, this day has really gotten away from me. But I'm just going to quickly look through here. Let's see. I'm just going to skip through all the highs and hellos. Let's see. Christy said, one way I can have a witness that I can know that some healing occurred, it has to be done only with the Lord. What you said is a second witness that the loss of strength can be a witness of that healing. Oh, being drained of your energy, yes. That healing has occurred. Thank you for sharing that. I thank the Lord for prompting you to share that so I could have another witness. Thank you. Thank you, Christy, for sharing. Oh, I love that. I'm going to pray for people on the spot from now on. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. I have places where I live and walk too often, and there are two places that immediately I could feel and tell were sacred places, and one of the ways you could tell. Nate says, how about this for seeing interesting numbers, Lindsey? I just passed the center exit for expert 333, getting off on Highway 33. Oh, by the way, when I was passing exit 333, which was over Highway 33, it was 3:33 p.m. I'm telling you, it's just how the Lord works, right? It's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Christy says, that's funny, Nate, haha. Let's see, he says, limits. Yes, that is what the Lord has been teaching me lately, is that when we put, this is Christy, when we put limits on ourselves, like I only eat this, or I only associate with people like that, or whatever, we also put limits on, it cut off. I'm guessing you're saying it also puts limits on the Lord. Sarah says, that story with the homeless man, wow, I have had similar experiences. That is such a cool experience and a witness to me. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Thanks so much for sharing, you guys. And I just want to thank you for joining me today. I hope to hear from more of you later. I'm going to come back and check the comments. So if you see this video later, feel free to share your thoughts below, and I'll get to those later. And I just want to say that so much of you are a part of my life, and I'm so grateful for that because it's your stories that you share and the things that you post on Facebook and the conversations that you and I have together that create these video messages. And so I hope you never feel bad if I'm sharing your personal stories. I'm keeping them anonymous unless I get your permission. But I hope you never feel bad that I share our conversations or the things that you've reached out to me with, because it's all for a good cause. It's all to help uplift and edify everyone who watches these videos. And never for a moment do I ever judge any of you. So even if we're on a different page or we don't see things the same way, or you doubt or question anything I share, I never look at you badly because of that. I never judge you because of that. I hope you always feel that that I love everyone the same. I really do, and I am just so grateful to know all of you, and I'm so grateful for all that you contribute to my life and all that you teach me, and I get something valuable from every experience I have with every one of you. So thank you for that. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Let's talk more again on the next video message, and in between now and then, feel free to reach out to me if you have more you want to share. Thank you so much for joining me today, you guys. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your week, and I will see you next time.